What's up?
Matter they have already.
So do you want me to let everyone know in Spanish that there's translation?
Yes, please.
Dr.
And put the
White?
screen up.
Ok, buenas tardes. Si necesitan traducción en español, por favor presione el enlace de interpretación en la parte baja de la pantalla para que puedan escuchar la reunión. Gracias.
Thank you. We're all set now.
Okay. All right, so on to the approval of the board meeting minutes for February 8th. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Wilcox,
I move we approve those minutes.
is there a second? Mr. Golson? You're muted, Mr. Golson.
I just have a quick question. I see here that it says no submissions for public participation. Does that mean that there was no written submissions, but there
No
was
written,
still?
no written submission. Yeah, there was public
So-
participation.
All right, so we don't list the folks that spoke and what their issue may or may not have done. Then we don't do anything. I mean, it looks like there was no public participation when we say that when there actually was. So how do we capture that moment?
Let's second the motion first and then we can discuss.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was
That-
second. I'm sorry.
Not yet. Mr. Conway?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Okay, Mr. Goldson,
All right. My point, as I just said,
Yeah.
of how do we capture on the folks that spoke at public participation?
I don't remember that we did that when we were meeting in person and they were, and there was public participation in person and not in writing.
Okay.
I mean, I would have to look back. I can't.
I tell you the
It's been
truth,
a while.
Yeah, I tell you the truth, I can't really,
Yeah.
I don't remember one way or the other. Anyhow, I
But
guess the question that becomes: do we want to? Are we obliged because of freedom of information to? I mean, these are people who actually participated in our meeting.
Mhm.
Should we have some kind of record of that, or what's the view of the attorney on that? I guess we should
Attorney-
get that.
Attorney Alexiadis?
Well, I think that the minutes ought to reflect that there was public participation.
Mhm.
The level of detail of minutes is subject to some discretion among the board. All that's required by FOA is that the motions and the votes on those motions be listed. But I would agree that the minutes right now, which say that there were no submissions for public participation, suggest that there wasn't any at all.
Right.
So that at minimum, that ought to be corrected. You could identify the people that spoke for public participation, or you could simply note that there was public participation remotely, or that a certain number of persons participated. I think you should be cautious when trying to summarize what people said, because you want to make sure that if it's summarized, it's accurate, but you don't need to summarize it.
Okay.
But I would agree that those minutes should be corrected.
Okay, so the correction was that there was public participation and maybe however many parents participated. And then we can look at what we were doing before we started meeting through Zoom. And then figure out how to move forward. Okay, Mr. Wilcox and then Mr. Goldson.
One possibility would be that since the people that participate in the session, their comments are recorded, that we could note that there was public participation and people can review the video to see what the public participation is. And for the people that submit things prior, if we're not going to put their submissions into the minutes, we could post the minutes with other meeting materials on the website. So that way, anybody wants to see, they'll have a method of being able to see the ones that are recorded and the ones that were submitted through email. Just a thought.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would move that we correct item number 4 in the minutes to reflect that there was public participation at the meeting.
Mhm.
So I would move that first.
Okay,
That's a motion.
Second.
any discussion? Seeing no discussion. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes,
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner. Dr. Joyner is not on. He did text me that he was not feeling well, so he may not be coming on. Mr. Conway,
Yes.
and the students are not on either, correct, Dr. White?
I'm here.
Ms. Aruna is on.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Ms.
And Dr.
Aruna,
Joyner. Dr.
Yes.
Joyner is on. Yeah.
I don't see Dr. Joyner.
No, I
He's
didn't
on,
He
but
is
but he's
on.
muted.
He's muted.
I don't see him at all on my screen. Dr. Joyner?
He might be having technical problems because he was in before and then dropped out of the meeting and just was brought back in. So
Okay. Okay, so we'll skip him on this one. And I am a yes. And so that correction to the agenda passes.
Madam President,
Madam
Mr.
President, you didn't
Goldson?
Like-
Dr. Jackson? I have you down as a yes for some reason.
Yes, yeah, just for the record.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jackson. Go ahead, Mr. Goldson.
well, Madam President, I'd like to note for the record that I actually won a motion, so I'm happy about that. I would also suggest, or I support, at the very least, listing the people that spoke, and then making a note that that there is a video available and maybe a link to the video if someone wants to see who spoke and what they said.
Okay.
I mean,
I
I'm not
would
making it as a
agree with
motion
that.
or anything. I'm just saying that's what
I
I.
don't, yeah,
what I
I don't think it needs to be a motion to just figure out how to record the minutes going forward in terms of public participation. The only thing that I have as a correction is the personnel report, where it says Dr. Joyner abstained, he actually recused. That's what I have in my notes. So I just want to make sure that that gets corrected in the minutes. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Is there any further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to approve the minutes with the corrections. Mr. Wilcox,
yes,
Mr. Goldson. Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner. She's still on. Dr. Joyner,
still not connected, like on screen, but no sound.
okay. Dr. Jackson.
Yes.
That was a good one, Dr. Jackson. Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore is not on. Ms. Aruna,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes, so the minutes pass with corrections. Next is public participation. Mr. Wilcox, will you take time, seeing that Dr. Joyner is not able to?
yes.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. White.
Okay. Our first speaker this evening is Dave Ciccarella. Mr. Ciccarella, you may speak.
Thank you, Dr. White. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So 2 items tonight. First, on the vaccinations. The governor announced recently that they're running a parallel track for teachers and school staff, and that's obviously welcome news for us. The logistics are in part being left to school districts and municipalities. Those have yet to be fleshed out. And what I'd like to do is offer the assistance of the New Haven Federation of Teachers to provide some support in the rollout and the scheduling of the vaccinations of teachers and school personnel. We're a large organization, and excuse me, and along with AFT Connecticut, we have the capacity to provide some assistance, and capacity has been an issue across the country for school districts and municipalities. So we want to help wherever we can so we can get the vaccinations administered efficiently and expeditiously. And again, we can assist both the school system and the New Haven Health Department wherever needed. Just please feel free to call on us wherever you deem appropriate. And the second item is just a thank you to Dr. Tracy. I see the school, the agenda tonight has many of the items that we're looking for information on. We've had amicable discussions about school nurses, updates on the bus monitors, substitute teachers, the COVID dashboard, and particularly the reporting procedures. We've gotten lots of inquiries from our members about that, and all those have been put on the agenda for tonight. So I want to thank Dr. Tracy for including those topics so we can get some updated information this evening. Thank you.
Our next speaker, it comes from Citywide Parent Team President, Ms. Waters, you may speak.
Good afternoon, board. I would like for someone from the board to guide me the next step into filing a complaint against the superintendent on retaliation against me as a parent leader in this district, and also as dismantling Citywide Parent Team. Citywide Parent Team has been recognized by this board as your parent team, and it has been on numerous occasions, because I have not agreed with the superintendent that she is now going above and beyond, whether it's herself or indirectly sending her staff to not be responsive to some of the things that is needed for our parents. It has to stop. I am not here for the district. Far as the personnel, I'm here for the parents. It is my job to at least collaborate with the district, with our parents, getting the information to our parents. I am never going to always say something that someone likes. And it shouldn't be about that. It should be about our children. What are the best interests of our children? I have done a lot of great things in this district that I don't even get the credit for, and that is fine. But what's the problem is when you have the superintendent going above and beyond to ignore, or to have her staff to ignore. I am still a parent in this district. And so even if I come to the powers to be to have questions answered, then they should be answering my question as a parent, as well as a parent leader. So I would like for this board, I would like to file a complaint against retaliation against the superintendent. And I need to have those answers sooner than later.
Our next speaker is Maritza Spell.
Hi, good evening. I just had a few comments. I was just wondering why the state is not, records are not updated with the COVID for the in-school. And it was always zeros, our district. So I just think that that should be updated more frequently, and other districts are able to do it. It's just embarrassing that New Haven's are all zeros every time I've looked up there. And also there's rumors happening that New Haven public school advocates have spies in schools, And I think that we are all grown up. And I think that as adults, we should be careful with the stuff that we try to put out there, especially when you're in part of the district. And I think that we should realize that New Haven Public School Advocates, we're just an entity. We don't have any power to make anybody else do anything. So I think that, instead of trying to make enemies and make people go against each other as the board, as the district, I think that we should collaborate with parents instead of trying to antagonize or make us look like if we're an enemy. Thank you.
Our next speaker is CJ from Black and Brown United in Action. Please state your full name.
Sure. My name is Kathleen John, and I am the lead organizer with Black and Brown United in Action. And I stand in solidarity with the president of Citywide Youth in terms of wanting to know how we can file a complaint against the superintendent. I'm also from Trinidad and Tobago, and I can tell you, we say, when grass cut low, you to see snake head. Thank you for all of you for being here. Please do not underestimate nor underscore the efforts which Ms. Waters put into her work. It is valid work. She speaks and represents the community, much like Mr. Golson. The attack on those who represent the community must stop. How about you spend your time investigating why people go to parties for 15 to 20 minutes, super spreader parties, not dinners, and think that's okay? The CDC says 15 minutes is enough time to contract. Or how about you figure out which NHPS school personnel related to a board member was riding with a juvenile and got in a car crash? In other words, I think there's different ways you could spend your time and your efforts rather than blaspheming and taking out your anger and retaliating against the truth tellers. Don't set us up for failure again. We know very well that these white-led nonprofits are geared and ready to exploit our people, and we are not having it. I look forward to the answer. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Claudette Kidd.
Hello, my name's Claudette Kidd. I was listening to Mr. Darnell Golson speak earlier regarding documenting of people, the population who talks at the meetings. Does this mean that you're going to be documenting parents' comments at all meetings, or was it just a specific meeting you was talking about? That was my question.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jessica Light.
Hello, my name is Jessica Light. I'm a New Haven parent and teacher. This is my 6th time asking publicly for a unified safety and health plan to protect me and the students and everyone in the community. I would also like to say that I really believe in what Citywide Parent Team has been doing for the district. And just remind people how important having everybody's, every stakeholder involved helps us. When the first time I spoke at a board meeting, it was for Reggie Mayo was the superintendent, and he emailed me afterwards and thanked me for my comments. Then Garth Harries did the same. So I really think we need to look at how we improve communications. I am in no way against anyone on the board or, other employees district-wide. I just want us all to communicate our issues honestly, transparently, so that we can all be working towards the same ends. Thank you.
Madam President, that concludes the public comments, those that have raised their hands thus far.
Thank you, Dr. White. We'll move on to the students' report. Mr. Golton?
I know we normally don't do this, but I just like to make it clear about what we discussed around the minutes. By no means we are interested in monitoring what parents are saying and keeping track of that. What we said was, I thought we all agreed on, is that we just want to list the people who spoke, and if people are interested to find out exactly what the issues were raised, that they could go and view the video. But I don't think at this point, and it's for all meetings, not for any specific meeting. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Golton. Okay, students report. Is there a student report?
Good evening, everyone. There's no student report this week. We have continued to have our monthly citywide student council meetings. And the consensus is that just every student council is doing what they can in their schools to promote togetherness during this difficult time and doing what we can online.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Aruna. Superintendent's report, Dr. Tracy.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Good evening, board and members of the school community. We have, before I get into the report, I just need to share that one of our central office workers, Ms. Donna Jones, had passed. It was sad. She worked with HR for quite some time, was a very excellent worker. And so she passed and was funeralized this week. Just wanted to share that. We also have many members of our school community who have lost their very close family members. And, you know, it is a sad time for a lot of our families. In my superintendent's report, at least a personnel report, before I put that through, I want to table the first item, and then the rest will go through. I'll table the first item.
Mr. Golton?
Since Dr. Tracy doesn't actually vote on the board, so she can't make motions, I'm wondering if one of us should make a motion to table the first item on the agenda, on the blue sheet.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Golton.
Would that be proper? I'll make that motion then, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Golton.
Okay, there's a motion to table the first item. Is there a second? Mr. Conway?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mr. Golton,
Yes.
Dr. Jackson. Dr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Conway. Thank you, Dr. Jackson.
Yes.
Ms. Aruna,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner, I'm not sure if he's on. Dr. Joyner? No. And I am a yes. And so that first item is tabled.
Madam President, I did have a question, but I was on mute. It doesn't. Could I ask Dr. Tracy?
Sure. Go ahead.
Dr. Tracy, in the event, since we're tabling this first thing, the first person, are we going to, who's going to be taking care of that school then? You're doing another thing, or? Because wasn't this leadership?
We're doing something different, Dr. MacArthur. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Okay, please proceed, Dr. Tracy.
Yes, so I asked that the personal report be accepted by the board.
Mr. Wilcox,
I move we approve the personnel report as,
as amended.
without the first name. I mean, that we've already taken off.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Is there a second? Mr. Conway? Second. Okay, it's been properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the personnel report. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner? No, no, Dr. Joyner? Dr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Aruna?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
Mr. Goldson?
Yes.
And I am a yes. And so the personnel reports passed. Please
You want me to go through the items, Madam President, or you want me to go through the rest of the items?
Yes, please, your entire report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So permit me to switch number 2 to number 3 because I have some parents and students on here, and it's entitled Sample Teaching and Learning Experiences. And I turn this over to Ms. Evelise Velasquez.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. We have several people who want to come on and give you an update about how learning has been going under the hybrid model. So Dr. White, we are able to see Abby Geary. I'm going to ask Abby to speak first. Abby is a 9th grader at Sound School and wanted to tell you what her experience has been and also what she looks forward to the future. Abby, can you hear us? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you guys see and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Welcome.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Abby and I go to the Sound School, and my take from online is that I think the Sound School should be in school because we do, well, they did a lot of like outdoor activities in different buildings and hands-on learning experiences that will be like outside, like boating, rowing, like like lots of hands-on things. Like not everybody would be in a big classroom. Like I don't know, I think it'd be like, I think that Sound School should be there.
Thank you, Abby. I'm going to ask Elizabeth Gonzalez to join us. She is the parent of a 5th grade student. And I think Pedro Mendia is here as well. Ms. Gonzalez.
Hola, buenas tardes. Sí, efectivamente, mi nombre es Elizabeth y tengo una niña en 5º grado. Bueno, y tengo otro en high school que también me gustaría ya que también participaran en las clases. Principalmente porque creo que la convivencia entre los alumnos es muy importante y los motiva más a poder.
Señora, deme un segundito. Is there going to be translation for this for the rest of the board members?
Yes,
Okay.
there is. Yes,
Because I understand her, but I know.
Yes,
Okay.
no, we have translation.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, Madam President,
Mr. Golden.
I want to make sure I understand what's going on here. Is the administration bringing out a bunch of folks to tell us that they want us to vote for in class?
No.
What is this exactly? I'm confused.
Sure, they're sharing some of their experiences in school, whether they're remote or in person. I don't even know what they're sharing because I don't know. I haven't heard anything. We just
Okay,
asked for them.
thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Señora González, ¿quiere decir otra cosa?
Señora González, ¿quiere empezar de nuevo? Y así puedo traducir para el resto de la Junta.
Claro que sí. Gracias. Efectivamente, quiero dar mi opinión a que no prefiero, sino que los niños están teniendo un poco de más entusiasmo al verse, estar en la escuela. Ella está 2 días en casa y 2 días en la escuela. Y para mí creo que el estar en la escuela es mucho mejor que estar en casa.
La señora González, Ms. González is telling us that she has 2 children, a 5th grader and a 12th grader at ISRAC and at Wilbur course, I believe, and that she really believes that the students are appreciating being able to see each other. So being 2 days at home and then 2 days in school, and that they are benefiting from being with their peers.
Y creo que la convivencia entre ellos les motiva mucho más a tener un poco el aprendizaje que en casa. O sea, estar en casa es muy difícil.
So being at home is very difficult for her children, and she believes that having the capacity of being able to share with other students is motivating them.
Gracias.
Thank you.
And then I would like to invite Jorge Rodriguez, who is an 8th grader at Martinez. Jorge, can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Please let us know what your thoughts are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Jorge, and I'm an 8th grader at Jonas Martinez. For me, online learning has been getting better as like time goes, and I don't really know how learning in school has been going, but it's, for me, my point of view, it's kind of dangerous considering the whole situation, that there's a pandemic going on. The kids could get sick with it, come back to their homes and get their parents sick, and it's dangerous for teachers too. But if it goes well, yeah, I'm all for going back to school. And yeah, it's online learning as well. It's going well, and it's been going well. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. And then we have Miss Jennifer Pelletier, who's the parent of a 4th grade student, I believe also at Martinez. Is she on? Yes. Jennifer, can you hear me?
Hi. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm here.
So tell us, what has been your experience or the experience of your child?
Okay, so my daughter Nina, she goes to John S. Martinez and she's in the 4th grade. She's having a wonderful experience with the remote learning. She seems to be excelling in all of her classes, more so than she would be in person. We, as right now, had just decided to send her back for the A student Mondays and Tuesdays. So she's doing Mondays and Tuesdays in person, and for the rest of the week remote. And she's excelling in all of her classes, and I think the teachers are doing just a fantastic job of keeping it all together and keeping everything in order. You're having a great experience all around.
Thank you. And we have a teacher, Christina Crive. I'm not sure I can say your name right. Criveloni?
So if you were in Italy, it would be Criveloni, but here it's just Crivelone.
Okay.
Half the time when I'm talking to the older kids, they're like, oh, like the cheese. And I'm like, kind of. So anyway, I just want to start by saying that 2 big points that I can't let go of no matter what I talk about, which is one, that this is a moment that I've never been more proud to be a teacher. I'm somebody in my school who's tech savvy, and I really it's been a big challenge for me, and I've been helping my colleagues, and just seeing how people are stretching themselves and still able to laugh and be happy and be nice to kids through all of this. I'm proud to be part of that group. And we're elated about the news today that we are going to be able to get vaccinated, because I'm also someone who has been very, very concerned and about both being with kids all day, which is all I want, but also feeling a bit physically scared. But besides that, we're all in, I spoke to a lot of my colleagues when I found out I'd be speaking here tonight, and everybody has echoed the sentiment that we're overjoyed to be able to see kids. That's why we're teachers. We were missing so many really wonderful light moments of being able to see a really funny thing a kid did or said. But it's really been also with its challenges. I don't know what other schools' numbers are like, but I work at Troop School. I'm a first grade teacher, and our numbers are still heavily remote. And so with that being said, and the parent who just spoke struck something interesting with me as well, because I have some kids this year that I know that are excelling and are doing particularly well because of the modality of the remote learning, because of the directness of it being almost one-to-one in a feeling, because even though I'm teaching a whole room full of virtual kids, when they're looking at it, it's me and it's direct. So that's been great for some of them, but we also have those kids who struggle with remote and who we can't reach and are sitting in front of the computer physically, but we can't get them to attend. So it's really kind of a difficult situation. And what we've noticed is that coming back, our students in the building are all doing well. They're doing well following the procedures. They're doing well with what we ask of them. But generally, as teachers, we feel that fully meeting the needs of both populations, of the remote and in-person population simultaneously, is not actually possible to the fullest extent. And so we've all been doing what we can to mitigate that and to be the most effective we can be for both of these people in very different scenarios. And like for me personally, I did a GoFundMe to raise money for headsets for everyone who's in the room with me. And so what I've opted to do is I'm doing mostly, and this is similar to what most of the teachers I spoke to in my building are doing, mostly as if I were teaching remote. And then during the independent breakout times is when we're working with the kids who are in the building. So we're giving the lessons to all of the students, like whole group is still whole group, small group is still happening on the computer, so that the kids in the room and the kids at home, if they're grouped together by ability or by mixed ability, whatever we're working with, so that those headsets that I raise money for, and so that may be something to consider moving forward with planning, because otherwise the kids to talk to each other on the meeting and have me talking, there's a lot of feedback from the meetings. But so that's made a big difference. But we worry that with the shift of having in-person, having kids at home that we're working with, the kids at home have more idle time than they had before. It's just inevitable with transitions, or if I have a kid who's taking their mask down and I have to pause and say, okay, to this student. So we're worried about some of those kids who aren't getting the same education that they were getting remote. So for my class, I have 17 students remote and 7 in my classroom. So that's a huge chunk of my class. And so I think that's what's keeping us up at night is, are we meeting everyone's needs to the best of our abilities? We also are concerned that we have situations where parents have secured in-person spots. Our classrooms capacities are greatly cut down, and then are just keeping their kids mostly remote. For example, my grade partner has more than one student who hasn't come back since the first week of in-person, and has been showing up remote every day, but has secured a remote spot. So we're worried about what does that mean as we get towards warmer weather and people become to feel a little bit more comfortable, because we can have our windows open all the way and things like that. So we're kind of questioning what does that mean, and trying to mitigate that as well. We are all greatly, greatly appreciative of the increased planning time. This has been really heavy for us, and it's been giving everyone an opportunity to work more. And like we've been having little mini seminars where someone knows how to use a program, so we all get together on on those planning times and figure out how to do those things. And we're seeing a difference in those hard to reach kids that we did get to come in person. So that's been really rewarding as well. I have a student here who I don't think I was ever reaching remote, and he'd sit in front of the computer every day. But I'm also still feeling difficult about the fact that I have 3 students that I felt that way about also, who are still home because their parents are afraid. So I think that, as expected, this has been a really mixed experience. And we look forward to the fact, that student who said that remote learning is getting better. We're just hoping to see that we can all continue to communicate the way we are and work together and keep making it an even better experience.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I wanted the board to see that they were not prepped. They can report on what they need to report on. And so Ms. Velasquez, we go to the principal and only 2 minutes and we are done with this, please. Thank you.
I don't see the principals on there. Dr.
They're
White,
not
is
there.
Mr. Menacho or Ms. Johnson on? They are. Okay, Mr. Menacho.
And time 2 minutes, please.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here. So just want to echo a lot of what was already said. You know, it's been a blessing having the kids back in person. I could just tell you a quick story of an experience today. We welcomed some of our Quinnipiac kids who are coming to Martinez. And just to see the joy in their faces, meeting with their parents, and just the delight that their kids are finally getting an in-person experience was phenomenal. By the end of the day, you know, I did some spot checks on our students. We did a tour of the building, and by the end of the day, those kids, you would have thought they've been at Martinez since kindergarten. So you know, that was a great thing to see, and you know, I think the experience will just get better as we welcome our middle schoolers back. We're very anxious and excited to have those students, because at a K-8 school, they're the ones that bring the life to the building. So we can't wait to welcome those students back and have those teachers in person as well. Things have been going well. You know, we've had some tech issues with devices, you know, things that we can't handle. You know, we've been proactive in solidifying tech for our families. So we've been proactive, and you know, I think it's been a great experience for the most part. The collaboration amongst teachers and administrators has been phenomenal. So I have nothing but good things to say. I think it's been a learning experience for all of us. And you know, it's what I tell my staff. You know, if there are any issues, problems, things that we need to celebrate, you know, bring them to the forefront, and we work through this as a team. And I think that's been the approach, and it's given us a huge level of success. And like I said, I can't wait to welcome our middle schoolers on the 4th and have our middle school teachers back. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menacho, and Ms. Edith Johnson, principal of Wilbur Cross.
Hello, everyone. I think my role is a little bit different. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the principal. I'm the proud principal of Wilbur Cross High School. While our high schools are not open yet, we are ready to receive our students. Remote has been difficult, to say the least, for many of our students. I think our whole community and world, you know, we're learning how to do things very differently. We just had our first virtual celebrations for our quarter that were really successful. The kids enjoyed them. We did live celebrations and things of that nature. I have to be honest, I am looking forward for our high schools to reopen and our students to come back. I had the pleasure today, I was walking the building. As you can see, I'm still here. You know, to make sure that everything's ready. So when we come back, and I had the pleasure of seeing a couple, to actually meet for the first time, my freshman basketball team, which was beautiful. It was the first time I actually got to talk to some kids in person in a year. So we're excited to receive our students back. You know, of course, you know, we all have our concerns in terms of a virus and mitigating strategies and ADA and all those things. But, you know, we too, as Ms. Christina shared, I know many of our teachers are excited that we have the opportunity to get vaccinated because no one wants to really be remote. I think for the most part, we do want to receive our students. And I have a very big building and it's very lonely here. It's very lonely. So, you know, again, you know, we do have some challenges. Our students are tired. Our seniors want to come back. And I think everybody's a little Google Classroom out. So we're looking forward to having the opportunity, hopefully, to come back sooner than later.
Great. Thank you, Edith, and thank you to all the speakers. It's always great to hear from you. If you want to see more of this, we do this traditionally in TNO, teaching and learning. We have brought lots of panels in to speak to us, and we will continue to do that. Thank you, Dr. Tracy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, parents and students and staff for sharing. I just wanted the board to get an update. After all, we exist for education for the kids, so I thought it was necessary to share some of what is going on across the schools. At this time, we're going to move to the ESSER 2. Ms. Keisha Hannons is going to lead us through. I had promised the board that we would share a presentation around what we're doing around ESSER 2 in terms of how we're structuring things. We've had some great meetings in focus groups already, and so we want to share so the board sees what it is we're doing as we move through and complete the process.
Madam President?
Mr. Golton?
Just a procedural question. Should we save our questions and comments until the end of the superintendent's report?
That would
Okay.
be great. Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Madam
Right.
President, is it okay to release the staff members who and parents who spoke,
Yes.
return them now?
Yes.
While that is being done, good evening, board, and good evening to our family and community members that are tuned in now. As Dr. Tracy stated, I'm Keisha Red Hannons, Assistant Superintendent, and I've been charged with managing and directing things in reference to our ESSER 2 grant to receive input and help put the application together. I have pulled on screen with me this evening just so you can see, because you can't do this work alone. Although I'm the project director, I have two capable and able project managers, Cora Munoz and Regina Carini, and I just wanted the board and the public to see them as they have been helping organize us through this process. So I will share my screen with everyone at this time and go through our presentation. So as Dr. Tracy mentioned, this is I want to make sure, can you see?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I
Yep.
can't see for some reason. I can't see. So this is our ESSER 2 grant.
Now we can't see it,
let me
whatever
see.
you did. Or at least I can't. There you
can
go.
see now?
Yep.
Okay. So this is our ESSER 2 grant. It is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, known as ESSER 2. Some may know it as the CARES Act. It's the Coronavirus Response and Relief Fund. And something happened with my screen sharing. Cora, I might need, it just disappeared. It just disappeared on me.
I've set it up that multiple people can share, so.
I might need, okay, there we go. All right, if we can go to the next slide. Not sure. Cora was ready. I told you need a team. So the grant development overview and process. We can go to the next slide. The NHPS is poised to receive $37.8 million over the course of the next 2.5 years in a grant from the U.S. Department of Education. This grant will be utilized to bolster our initiatives and programming and our strategic plan. As you know, you approved the strategic plan right before COVID hit in March of 2020. And as we reflect over our goals on a strategic plan, of course, we are not on target to meet those goals at this time. And so it is our intention to utilize the ESSER 2 funds to help us implement our initiatives, but also embrace new and innovative and creative initiatives that will help us meet our goals and hopefully surpass them. Because when March 2020 hit, we began crisis teaching and crisis leading. And so now's the time for us to help out our students and our staff. Next slide. So the grant development process. We are looking at the process in 3 phases. You've heard about our focus groups. We are very excited about the focus groups we've held. We've held focus groups with administrators, teachers, students, support staff. Over the past 2 weeks, this week and next week, we will be holding focus groups with parents and community members. And we'll talk a little bit later about the turnout for the staff focus groups in a minute. The focus groups have been utilized to receive input from those designated groups to inform decisions that are being made by a planning committee. The planning committee has been hard at work. The planning committee consists of 90 stakeholders. This includes staff in NHPS, from administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals, as well as community members, and parents are also on the planning committee. The planning committee will make recommendations to the executive team, and the executive team will make final recommendations to the superintendent, and the superintendent ultimately will make decisions on what is included in the grant. But we feel really good with the feedback we have received thus far in our focus groups, and we're looking forward to our conversations with parents in the community. So our internal stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier, we have held a series of focus groups. I jokingly say to our team leaders, I have hijacked their calendars in order to make this work, to get input from everyone. And the last bullet, the all NHPS slide, we had 60 people attend. So we have had input from 500 stakeholders internally throughout the district. We are very happy and pleased about that. So although we know we can't ever include everyone in a planning committee, providing them an opportunity and space to provide input has been important, and many of our staff have taken advantage of that, as we've had a total of 500 attend these focus groups. As I mentioned earlier, we have parent and community focus groups scheduled for this week and next week. They are organized around the priority areas, and I will speak to them briefly. Parents and community members, if you're listening, please register. You're probably tired of getting the notices, but we really want to hear from you and hear your ideas that you have on how we should invest these $337.8 million over the next 2 years. So we want you to please come out to one of these focus group sessions. Next slide. So the Essa 2 grant is organized around 4 priority areas. I'll quickly go through the priority areas. Priority 1, our team lead for priority 1 is Miss Evelise Velasquez, and it focuses on academic supports, learning loss, learning acceleration, and recovery. This is about equity and access and education for our students. The targeted resources are for our students disproportionately affected by the pandemic. So access must be focused on our most vulnerable students, including students whose progress decreased, students with disabilities, students experiencing homelessness, disengaged youth, are those with barriers to remote learning. And in this group, we're talking about summer schooling. What is it going to look like, and how does it look different? Extended day academies. How else are we going to provide additional supports to our high school students? You know, what does credit recovery programming look like for those students, but also accelerating programming, and how can we implement programs where we can have students graduating with associate's degree? So they're looking at a number of things. These are a variety of topics that have come up to date. In priority 2, we're focused on family and community connections. This is exactly what it says: direct engagement with families in the community, such as faith-based organizations, businesses, and social service providers. So in this particular group, we're looking at how do we leverage our partnerships throughout the city. We're also looking at how do we support families. We know we're familiar with Parent University, but are we implementing Family Academy programs in each school? And if we are, what does it look like for our families? Are they able to have monthly programs helping them learn strategies to help their children in remote learning, as well as in-person learning as well? Priority 3. In priority 2, team lead is Miss Gemma Joseph Lumpkin. Priority 3, school safety and social emotional well-being of the whole student and school staff. This priority area is near and dear, I'm sure, to everyone's heart, as we've all suffered some losses through this traumatic experience of COVID. And so we want to take care of the social emotional well-being of not just our students, but our staff as well. This priority area is led by Miss Tiffany Jackson. She's looking at additional behavioral and mental health services. How are they delivered in person and remotely to support the entire New Haven community? You know, in this priority area, they are talking about how can we implement calm down rooms within our schools? How can we help teachers and students so that we feed their emotional well and ensure that they're emotionally well to support one another? You'll also notice in this priority area, it talks about PPE. We have a subgroup which is led by Mr. Philip Penn to work on PPE. And in this, we have our operations team that's working on how we leverage these funds to ensure that everyone remains healthy and safe. Finally, priority 4, we call this our catch-all priority area: remote learning, staff development, and digital divide. And in this area, we're focused on maintaining and upgrading access to technology and connectivity for the long term. It is our belief that remote learning is not going to go away anytime soon. We know we were able to meet the superintendent's goal of being one-to-one by September, but now we're asking ourselves, should we be 2-to-1? Should we have devices at home as well as devices in school for students? What does professional development look like? We must continue to help our teachers in this unique environment, which has become the norm, navigate through it to help them improve upon their skills as well, and also technical assistance and training for our families as well. So that is the Essa 2 grant. Those are the priority areas. Finally, I'll just share with you our timeline. We started on February 8th with our launch with the planning committee. And that was on February 8th. And we've had 4 meetings thus far with the planning committee, and we have one final one coming this Friday. As I mentioned earlier, our focus groups beginning next month and next week. We'll start drafting recommendations based on the focus group conversations, based on the planning committee meetings. And then the executive team and the grant writer will finalize the application for review for the superintendent. And then final adjustments will be made March 15th to 19th. It's important to note that the application has not officially come out yet, but we want it to be ahead of the game to ensure that we had input from everyone that was part of the New Haven community that wanted to provide input. And so, like I stated earlier, those opportunities for input exist this week and next week as well. Or you can send an email if you cannot attend a session. You can send the email to me. Thank you. Oh, and did I say the lead for priority 4 is none other than Dr. White.
Thank you.
Dr. Yamid.
Dr. Tracy, you're muted.
Budget updates, Mr. Penn.
Good evening, everyone. Let me share the screen here very quickly. There's not a lot in the way of budget updates, but I will take you through a few things that have developed since we last spoke. I'm going to not go through the full presentation. I know you've had it in your packages. I did want to point out, I know there was a conversation around this piece with respect to the 20,051 students that we reported on this graph. That's our October 1st official enrollment that's reported to CSDE. And I do want to make the board aware that I'm going to be working with Dr. Sherbin to do a little more of a deep dive into the loss of the 2,000 students that we've had over the past 4 years. I'm not sure we're going to get to necessarily a root cause analysis, but we'll at least see if there are particular grades, if there are particular schools, or if there are particular declines coming from suburban or resident students that are driving that change. So that'll be forthcoming at some point because we do want to understand what's sort of happening within that dynamic. As I've said at the last meeting, the request we're looking at is 8.8 million. It's about a 4.65% increase over our current year budget. I did want to take an opportunity and make the correction here that Mr. Goldson picked up on. There was an unallocated revenue item that I was not aware of in our our January 8th expenditure forecast. So that did in fact bring the total down to the 188,398,052 that had been shown, and I believe an F&O meeting when we last talked about our forecast. So that is the difference in the two, and that unallocated revenue will be an offset to one of those line items going forward. So the unallocated revenue will go down, but the associated expense will go down as well, bringing you back down to that total as shown there. I did want to take an opportunity to talk about a couple of things on this page. Credit to Ms. Heiklis Williams, who pointed out to me that I had an error in the paraprofessionals for their salary change for next year. It's step moving in a 2.00% GWI. So that will not match what's in your packets. We did get the version that's online changed today. So it's 2.00, not 2.40 in terms of the general wage increase for next year. I know there was questions around the substantive drop in utilities. That reflects both the closure of the West Rock and Quinnipiac schools and the reduced utilities that would be coming out of those two. But we're also starting to see the benefits of the energy efficiency upgrades that we've been doing over the past several years. I think as a lot of the board members know, we've been upgrading to LEDs in a number of the schools for several years. Some of those projects are now fully paid for, so we are reaping the benefit without having the cost of the installation associated with that. I did also want to comment and just add the additional detail around the transportation budget for the 21-22 year. We're assuming that the managed school transportation grant is going to return to a more normal level. And more normal for us would be about a $3 million a year grant. That's a direct offset to our transportation expenses that we have. Versus the current year, we're only projecting 1.5 million. And the reason for that is we were advised by the state that we were probably looking at a lower grant because for a number of months, as you know, we were not actually transporting the students to the managed schools. So under the terminology of the statute, we couldn't qualify for the full amount. So we're reflecting conservatism in the current year, but we do think it's going to return to that $3 million level for next year. That's the way we're planning at this point. I wanted to provide a couple of updates on this slide as well. As you remember, this is the slide that we had in terms of proposed new items. The third item down, I'll call out to you that we had originally planned on potentially adding up to 11 new staff members to support EL for next year. We're reducing that to 6. Not because the need isn't there for the 11, but rather that we have an opportunity to pay for 5 in current year grant allocations that we have. So that would take the 11 down to 6 for next year. Go down 3 more lines from there, and you'll see that we've fully crossed out the new K-5 math program. I shouldn't say program, I should say text. That's again because we've identified funds in the current year grants that we have to fully pay for that. And you'll be seeing information on that coming forward. I think at T&L, and then it'll eventually come to F&O, and then on to the full board. So that's a good news story in terms of that. The rest of the items on this list, with the exception of the implementation of Black and Latinx studies, are things that could frankly be at risk because of what's been proposed in the governor's budget for the next 2 years. We're going to have to implement that Black and Latinx studies, regardless of whether or not we have funding for it from another source. It is another unpaid mandate from the state that we have to comply with. Everything else on here is not a mandate. The FTEs for EL support are, but everything else on here is going to be frankly a risk if things continue to play out. We'll talk about what's in the governor's budget in a few seconds. We did continue to have conversations around this equity piece that we had introduced at the last meeting at the most recent F&O. And we're going to invite the district equity leadership team, DELP, to become participants in what they think would be good factors to include in this process going forward. So we look forward to getting their feedback and developing this. And, one of the key takeaways from the F&O meeting is that this may be a evolutionary process, not a revolutionary one. And it may not be something that we solve entirely in a single budget cycle. So I did want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing right now in terms of the governor's proposed budget. Excuse me, I didn't mean to hop around on slides right now. But the governor's proposed biennial budget is going to freeze, if it goes through, ECS and for us, the Alliance grant at the current levels for the next 2 years. Now, what's particularly bitter about that is it's only 2 years into what should have been a 10-year plan to increase education funding, especially to the urban districts in Connecticut. That freeze will have a devastating, and they don't usually use terms like that, impact on New Haven public schools if it gets approved by the legislature. And the reason I say that is it effectively gives us no opportunity to do anything with Alliance other than what's in there now going forward. So any staff member that's on Alliance right now, we don't have a way, if it stays flat, to pay for their salary increases for the next 2 years. We don't have the opportunity to do anything new. And because we're an Alliance district, any change in what would have been our ECS allocation has to be made through the Alliance grant. So this is very, very troubling for us as we look forward to what the governor has proposed so far. And let me reiterate this as well. The ESSER 2 funds that Ms. Hannans was just discussing a few minutes ago, those are not equivalent to ECS funding. You cannot use federal grant programs like ESSER 2 to cover your existing general fund expenses. That's called supplanting your general fund budget. You have to supplement your general fund budget when you look at using federal funds. Now, we did have a very productive conversation with our legislative delegation back on 2 Fridays ago, I think. We were going to testify what would have been the education committee, but the date was incorrect. There's an opportunity coming up for us to testify at the education committee, and at Representative Walker's request, we will plan on doing that. Just to reiterate for the benefit of that committee that they understand just how troubling this is, not just for New Haven, but for all the districts in Connecticut that are, particularly the 30 that are in the Alliance program. It's bad form that the state has basically proposed this just 2 years into what should have been a 10-year fix. But those are the basic updates on the budgetary process where we are right now. So it'll be the $8.8 million increase that we're proposing that will go over to the mayor's office. And Mr. Gorman and I have had ongoing conversations about this for the last several weeks. So he knows sort of what's coming at this point. And then we'll continue on with the budget process on the city side as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penn. I'm going to skip item V, which is number 5, and I'm going to go to the school nurses. And along with the school nurses, we'll deal with the dashboard at the same time. Director Bond is on here. Director Bond, you're muted.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you for inviting me, Superintendent, to be here to talk about the nurses. And with me this evening is Cynthia Harris, our nurses chief president. So she's here with me as well. And I know there was some questions around the nursing staffing structure. So I thought that it would be great for for the two of us to just come on and be able to share some information and some updates. So as you know, we opened up in the hybrid model in January 19th, and went through some structural changes in regards to staffing structures. We have partnered to ensure that we had sufficient nurses. We partnered with several temp agencies to be able to cover while we're interviewing and vetting for additional nurses. We do currently have a nurse assigned at every school. We often, if we get someone that calls out without sufficient notice, we will have a nurse cover 2 schools to just ensure that there is coverage. However, there is a school nurse assigned to every single school. Currently, we are budgeted for 41 nurses. We have 29 nurses in total, and we have 3 nurses on FMLA. We are currently vetting actively and have posted in numerous and different websites to ensure that we are interviewing and gearing up to ensure that we meet the capacity and start preparing for our future phases of reopening for the high schools. As of now, pre-K through 8 does have coverage. And so we are working closely with our nurses union to be able to ensure that we meet retention efforts, and then also worked closely with the Board of Ed so that we can ensure recruitment efforts and are doing an incentive pay for recruitment efforts. And so we have definitely convened with the union and labor department to ensure that we try to be as competitive with the market. As you know, nurses are in high demand, and we are not as marketable as other competing locations and hospitals alike. And so that's been very challenging, and some of the variables contributing to the loss of being able to really retain our nurses. I wanted to turn it over to Cynthia Harris to see if she had anything to add at this time.
Afternoon, good evening. I just wanted to say that the nurses are excited. We're there to do what we need to do, but it just needs to be stressed. We're not the catch basin for what all other factions in the school do not do. We all need to contribute and do our equal part to make this work as a cohesive unit for all of us. The nurses are excited. They're working hard. Sometimes they're overworked, but we are getting the job done. But we need a cooperation on every level to make this a viable task for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Director Bond, did you say something about the dashboard?
No, I was going to turn that over. I was going to turn it over to that next. Let me just share the screen really quickly. So we've been working diligently on establishing a face forward dashboard so that can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we've been working, my epidemiologists have been working on creating a face forward dashboard that will be able to be available to the public and posted on the Board of Ed's website. And so basically what you see in front of you is in-person learning positive cases. We broke it into 3 different color-coded categories: active positive cases in the red category. The green category is inactive positive case, staff and students, and then pending positive case. And pending positive case meaning it was reported and we're just awaiting verification to ensure that we have the information. Happy to report that we did, when we first opened up in January 19th, there was a lot of adjusting and making sure that we were following mitigation protocols. We worked really well together as a team to address concerns that we identified during contact tracing. Currently, we have 6 total positive cases within the school as far as, and then those are 2 students and 4 staff. And so right now that is throughout the district. And so we are so pleased to see those low numbers, which means that the protocols and the procedures are all working and are in place. And so this will be made available on a weekly basis. It will be updated and uploaded on the website so that the public can be able to also see where our schools are actively in regards to community cases within the school.
Thank you, Director Bond. Thank you so much. Miss Lisa Mack and Mr. Carl Jackson are on here for bus monitors, and Lisa will just roll right into substitute teachers. I have these items because these questions were asked, and I just wanted the team to give the answers to these questions that were posed. So Lisa Mack, if you're on with Mr. Jackson, please share about where we are with the bus monitors and the substitute teacher situation.
Good evening. I'm just going to let Mr. Jackson, this is Lisa Mack, Director of HR for New Haven Public Schools. Mr. Jackson's up here. He's going to give the update for the bus monitors, and I'll provide support if needed. And I will provide an update for the substitute teachers. Mr. Jackson?
Okay, that should be a little better. Thank you. Thank you to the board as well for allowing us to share. The last time that how many monitors applied came up amongst the board, the number was 3. Since that time, it has escalated to 33. So I guess there's some improvement there. So that 33 were invited to a virtual hiring event that happened last Thursday. We called and we also sent meeting invitations. As a result of that, only 8 chose to participate out of the 33. We had a couple of emails that were kicked back, and then one person denied. All 8 interviewed very well, and I processed their recs for to be hired. So that will add some bus monitors to the group. But there's one thing that we need to be clear about. There will not be bus monitors on every single bus. Just won't happen. It's not workable. What we are doing is that we're ensuring that we have bus monitors for pre-K and SPED, as we always have. And we've escalated the number of bus monitors that are being dispersed amongst the services that we have running. And First Student is providing support for those bus monitors. There is a downside to that, and it's more related to the budget because we have to pay a premium for those bus assistants. Some of them are bus drivers. Some of them are just monitors that they hire at a premium rate, which could have an impact on our existing budget. We pay $12 an hour, and the premium rate for a student could be as high as 40 because they have to have a delta to recover their costs. So that said, we are making progress, but we also have to face the reality of what the market will bear. I checked with some other school districts similar size, and most are not doing it at all. Those that have been able to obtain some monitors, they've been basically shifting them around so that they can have kind of a coverage that reflects. We don't know when they're coming, and they're being dispersed around discipline problems. But the reality is that there has been some progress. It's probably as good as we're going to be able to do right now. I talked with Lisa about having another hiring event, but we can only, interview what the market brings to us. And, I think that we've advanced somewhat, and we'll continue to try to bring folks on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. Lisa, substitutes, please.
Again, good evening, board members, Madam President, Mayor Elicker, and of course, Dr. Tracy and other board members. With regards to the substitute teachers, I wanted to give an update as to where we are as far as onboarding and what we currently have in our database. We currently have 199 active substitutes and substitute aides in our database and that are available for substituting. But I need to mention that it's very important to understand that although they're in our database, they are in other districts' databases as well. So they have an opportunity to hop around from district to district. And that's what we find, that we don't always have a consistent pool of subs because they hop around from district to district. So when they're available, they do teach within our district. But as of February 22nd, which is today, from December 2nd, we did actually have 126 new non-degree substitutes. That's due to the flexible staffing implementation that came down from the state, that we're able to hire substitute teachers that are non-bachelor degree. And we were utilizing those substitutes to help with our ADA accommodation. So we were controlling the narrative with regards to assigning those substitutes to ADA approved assignments, which help support the teachers that are teaching remotely. And they're actually assigned in person to help classroom management while teachers are teaching remotely. So currently, as of today, we have 66 substitutes that are assigned to ADA assignments from pre-K through 5, and those assignments are all covered. Again, this is a fluid list simply because there are days when substitutes cannot work. Of course, there's days when if they have to quarantine for any reason. So that list is fluid. We are currently assigning substitute aides for paraprofessional positions as well. So we're currently, as of February 22nd, we did assign a 3 additional substitute paras and for 3 additional substitute aides for paraprofessionals. And we also have 9 substitute teachers we assigned for special education substitutes for ADA approved teachers that are out on leave. And so we're constantly recruiting and hoping to increase our pool of substitutes. Some questions that were asked, and so I want to just address those. A question was asked, how many substitute teachers are available for class coverage across the district? And again, that database, we do have 199 in the database. However, substitute coverage is based on which classroom teachers actually need substitutes. Not every classroom teacher that is out, not every teacher that is out requires a sub. For example, school social worker, if that teacher happens to be absent that day, we would not be sending a sub for that particular coverage. So it's only when the classroom coverage is needed, that's contingent on when we'll send a substitute teacher or assign a substitute teacher to that classroom. The question was asked, what are the district's policies for coverage when there are not enough substitute teachers? Well, we currently have Frontline Education, which is an absent management system that we utilize to allow substitutes in that pool, in that database, to actually take on assignments. So it's a fill rate. You have an opportunity to pick up assignments. We currently have 30 subs that are assigned to long-term assignments for FMLA. And that's, again, that's fluid as well. We have a database, again, is 199 substitutes. However, they pick up assignments when available if it fits their current work schedule. We do not have a policy for substitutes for coverage when we don't have enough substitutes. We use our Frontline Education system. However, with the recently ratified contract for the paraprofessional contract, in their contract, we are able to assign qualified paraprofessionals to cover classroom up to 10 days in a calendar month. But again, our first resource is utilizing our absent management system, which is ASAP, to allow substitute teachers to take on assignments. And if the administrator if needed, they can assign a qualified paraprofessional, which means a paraprofessional who has a bachelor's degree, who can cover the classroom up to 10 days in a calendar month, and they would be given a stipend for each day they covered.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Thank you, Ms. Mack. Let me say this too, that as Lisa said, or Ms. Mack said, when subs are assigned, for example, we may assign a sub to say Lisa's class today, and that person may call out, can't go in. Those things happen. The same things happen with nurses. The nursing director may assign a nurse to Lisa's school, and we can control who calls out. They can call out sick, or they may not return. Those things do happen. It's not that those things do not happen, it's what we do when those things happen. And I must say our director of health, they've been working very hard in those classrooms, in those schools, to put in temporary workers, just like we would do with a teacher's classroom. When the teacher is out, we put in a sub. So there's a temporary worker while they're working hard. They're hard at work, trying to still continue to recruit nurses. I know sometimes folks are looking for everything must be in place, everything must be in place. It's not as simple as that, but we are mindful about the safety of our students and staff, and we are working hard to make sure that whatever the issues are, we have them mitigated. And we're working closely with the health department. We're working closely with Lisa Mack to make sure that we have subs. We even train a pool of subs ahead of time to make sure that we have subs in place and they understand how to use the Google Classrooms, especially those who have to come in to work for teachers on ADA. Remember, usually substitute teachers would only be working if a teacher calls out sick. We have flipped that around and said, no, in this situation, we're putting them in the classroom, whether a teacher is out sick or not. We're putting them there to make sure that they're helping to support the students who are coming in person, because we cannot leave the kids alone while the teacher is doing remote teaching. So I want to thank all those who have shared the good, bad, and the who have shared just about everything from their heart. And now I think that's the end of my presentation. I know we had an updated case reporting procedure, but we forgot to put that document in the board packet. I'll email it to the board, so I will not have Dr. White present without having you have a copy in your hand to look at. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Any questions? Dr. Jackson and then Mr. Golton and Mr. Conway.
Good evening, Dr. Tracy and crew. Thank you so much for that presentation. It's a lot to digest. I just have I have a couple questions for Ms. Hannons. Can I ask her directly or should I go through you, Dr. Tracy?
Both of you. Think you asked me, asked it to me, doctor?
Should I ask so I asked, oh, I'm claiming doctor for you, Keisha. Should I ask Ms. Hannons? I'll say Dr. Hannons, I'm claiming that. Ms. Hannons, my questions to her directly or through you? That's all I want to know. For the Essa grant money?
I think the protocol is through me and then I'll direct it to who needs to answer.
Okay, so for priority one, first of all, I'm going to say that, I don't want to forget about the kids that we think are middle of the road or that we think that they're excelling so well. Those kids are going to need help too. So let's not forget about them. Sometimes they get lost in the sauce because we just assume they're going to do well. But they're also going to need assistance, and their assistance may not necessarily have to be the way you deal with children who may have more challenges. So I really am very focused on the vouchers for the tutoring and that is going to be needed to help everyone catch up. And I'm hoping that is part of what we are having in our plan, because that's going to work for some people. So maybe that's just a statement about priority one, not quite a question. I would love to see that in you guys' plan for those who would benefit from that, and however you want to frame it for usage, but that should be a possibility for those children. Priority two, please don't forget about working parents. I'm a working parent, and it's really hard to go to things at 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30. So when we're engaging the community, I want to make sure that we're remembering working parents. It's even hard for me to even get to teachers' conferences because I'm getting off from work at 5:30. I miss a lot of them. So let's just try to make sure that working parents are in mind when we're doing that. It's kind of hard to schedule around us, but we miss a lot of things because of 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30, even sometimes 5:30. So please keep that in mind. Priority 3, that was the PPE. Priority 4, I had a question about, what was priority 4 was Dr. White? Which one was priority 4?
Yes, remote learning, digital divide, and professional development.
Yeah. I don't have a question for that. I'm just, that's new for everybody. I'm looking forward to see how we do that. So really wasn't questions, Dr. Tracy. Those were just comments. I'm really
Okay.
focused on working parents, making sure that we can really be engaged for priority 2. And I know that might mean longer days, but maybe Dr. Tracy, you can let those people come in a little bit later if they're staying, if they're gonna stay a little bit. And and that the vouchers are seriously considered. And
Thanks for your feedback, Dr. Jackson. And priority 1 is taking care of loss of learning, recovery of learning, and acceleration of learning. So it's covering all those groups you talk
that's the
about.
vouchers, right?
Yeah,
That would be,
it's not vouchers, no.
but I'm saying the tutoring.
Yes, it's taking care of those students who need their learning to be accelerated, those students who need to recover, and those students who have suffered tremendously from loss of learning. So it's taking in all students, all student groups.
Right, because I don't think we can do it all of ourselves. This is a huge, this is to me bigger than the pandemic for us locally. So we can't do it all by ourselves. That's why I'm really pushing that. Okay.
And priority, you said working parents, you have to understand that we get to work very early too. And so when you go through several of those meetings, it's telling on the staff too. And so what we do, we try to keep it at 5:30, 6:30 for many of our meetings. But parents can also email if, for example, in this planning, if parents have anything that they want to share, they could share it through email to Ms. Hannons. It could come through me. It could come through any of the priority leads, through Gemma, whoever the priority leads are.
Just don't forget about us. Make sure, don't forget about us. And my last question was around the bus monitors. We talked about those bus monitors, and Mr. Jackson was talking about money. I thought those were covered underneath the COVID monies. Whatever, that money.
That Phil speak to that,
I'm sorry. Would you mind repeating the question?
Bus monitor, she said she thought that was covered with COVID funds.
It can be.
Okay.
Because Mr. Jackson said, what I got from his speech was that we have to be realistic in that we might not have the money. So that's why that's why I asked the question, because my understanding was that it was covered by COVID funds.
It can be. I think he was just trying to differentiate what we pay for bus monitors and what we get charged by first student for bus monitors.
They charge us to let somebody ride on the bus.
They charge us for bus monitors at a premium rate versus what we pay.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for me. Thank you so much for all the work. This is hard.
Thank you,
Dr. Jackson. Mr. Goldson? And then Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Madam President. I got to tell you, I'm a little disappointed. I saw that both Ed and the mayor were not in the meeting, and I prepared a couple of motions to get moved, but the mayor is back, so I guess I'll just forget about those for the time being.
Perfect.
I have some questions and comments around the Essa grant, the budget updates, and and one question around school nurses, and then around bus monitors. Around the Essa grant, a couple of questions. First question on page grant development process on this presentation. The last section here says that the executive team will make the final determinations as to what will be included in the Essa grant. Where does this have to come before the board for approval?
Of course,
this grant?
Not necessarily approval. Just share with you what the grant is. We did not come for Essa 1 approval, not necessarily approval, Mr. Golson. We have to write.
Wait a minute. I think I just heard Mr. Penn say we did.
Yeah, we would still have to come to the board with an abstract for the grant.
An abstract, yes.
Yeah.
So it still has to have board approval.
1.
That's I thought all the grants had to come before the board. Usually the state or federal government wants the board to approve grants. So
yes, they do.
Right. So I would hope that you would include us a little earlier in the process so that we don't have spend a whole lot of time at the end of it trying to debate what we think should or should not be in the grant. And that comes to my next question is, I asked for a list of this committee of people who are putting it together because I wanted to make sure that people like me, that our input is included in this grant. And I've been on this board for 5.5 years. I came here near the end of the TIF grant, and I remember the discussions over and over and over again about how we blew it with the TIF grant. How, that $55 million basically just flew in the wind. And at the end of the day, we didn't really change the structure of this organization. Certainly you weren't a part of that. Miss Hannah's wasn't a part of that. A lot of people who are involved now may have not been a part of that, but I hope that we learn from our mistakes. And I think our mistake was not to have enough community input, parent input from voices we may not want to hear in this process. And it concerns me to the bone to know that someone who is the leader of our parent group, a parent group that we developed, that we partially fund, and we actually say on our website is that we support, is not included in any of this. There's something like an 80-member planning committee, and like 5 of those people are parents. I understand one of those persons is not even a New Haven parent. I don't know how we have parents that come to these meetings every week, the same parents over and over again, because they take the time out, because it's important to them to be a part of this process. And none of them, not a single one, is included on this planning team. And that to me is frustrating and it's embarrassing. And I don't quite understand why it is. I can't understand why the citywide planning team president either is not on the committee herself or wasn't asked to make a couple of recommendations to this committee. I don't understand it. And it's frustrating for her to hear her get on this meeting. And God knows, everybody knows the relationship she and I have had. It hasn't been the best relationship, but I still respect that organization and its leadership. And it appears to me that this administration hasn't done that. I don't think there's any excuse to leave them out of here. There's no excuse. The New Haven advocates, you may not like them. I certainly didn't have the best relationship with them, but not to include them in this process when they've shown their interest in time and time again every meeting in the New Haven public school systems is frustrating for me. And it makes me think that we're going to continue to keep making the same mistakes that we've made in the past because we don't include different voices at the table. So I got to tell you, I'm frustrated, and I hope over the next couple of weeks that we see a change to that. We see some people, particularly parents, added to this. We don't have any students on this committee. I don't understand that. We don't have any aldermen, one of our main funding sources. I don't understand that. It looks like we may not have invited any of our state delegation because none of them are represented at the table. They fund us. I don't understand that. I don't understand any of it, quite frankly. So if somebody could explain to me why all those people were left outside of the room, I would like to hear that. Now, I don't know if I'm supposed to make my second question, or should I wait for an answer to that, or should I continue on, Madam President, Ms. Superintendent, Dr. Superintendent?
Ms. Superintendent, Dr. Superintendent.
Dr. Tracy.
So I sent to you, Mr. Golson, you asked for a list of community members. I sent to you and I gave my explanation on that. Around about 19 members from the community are on that list who have decided to work in different priority groups. Many of them are outgrowth or continuation of our strategic planning team, because if you look at the grant, it's hitting the areas of our strategic school plan, All of those is in the area of TACO, as we call it, and which is talent, academics, climate and culture, and organization. We have piggybacked on a lot of our strategic planning members to be a part of this team because this has to be aligned also with our strategic planning. That's how those were selected. Many of these members on that team that I sent to you were part of our strategic planning team.
Madam Superintendent, Madam Superintendent, as Ms. Hannons so aptly pointed out to us, the strategic plan was developed before the pandemic. It's a totally different world now. And we are dealing with different issues that we never thought we would have to deal with, particularly around this pandemic, children being remotely taught and falling behind. I mean, falling behind even further than they were before the pandemic. So to suggest that this should be aligned to the strategic plan totally, I think is a little off base. But it still doesn't, your answer still doesn't explain why other people were left away from the table. Why were aldermen not included? Why were state delegation representatives not included? Why was our parent groups not included? And what really concerns me when you look at the list that you sent us today is like 95% of those people are on your payroll. I mean, even some of the community representatives are on your payroll. I know at least one who works as a dean in one of the schools. How can they be independent voices? How can they bring a different voice to the table when they all work for you? So, you know, I know I'm not going to be invited to sit at the table or make recommendations for folks to sit at the table, because that's just what happens with me and this leadership right now. But I just can't understand why other people who have earned the right to have a seat at the table are not included. But I won't press that any further right now. I will continue to press it because I'm concerned about what the final product is going to look like with these folks not included. I know for a fact that the citywide parent team has asked to sit on every single committee. Whenever she gets an invitation, she sends it back saying, I want to be on it. And she has not been invited to any of them. So that's frustrating to me. And it leads to another issue. It goes to another issue. I understand that she has a partnership with the governor's office to do workshops for her parents around vaccinations. And she's asked for use of the parent link to get that information out to her parents, Black and brown parents particularly, and has not been granted that permission. So I'm concerned about what I'm seeing, and I hope it gets fixed. My next issue is around the budget updates. I just had two quick questions, Dr. Tracy. The first is on page 14. I think it's just a simple question. On the second line, it says equity adjusted EL and GF students. I know what EL is. I don't know what GF only is.
General funds. GF is general funds.
So like our neighborhood schools, is that what GF are? GF schools are? They're not magnet schools, which means they're neighborhood schools, right? Is that the same definition?
Mr. Penn.
So there are certain schools that are neighborhood schools that also have support from various grants. That's actually, you get a sense for that on page 16.
Okay.
But there are certain schools that are neighborhood schools that only have the general fund. So that's what we're referring to there.
How many of those schools do we have?
It's a handful. I want to say it's 4, maybe 3.
Like the hooker schools, for example?
I believe Nathan Hale comes to mind. I think that's one that specifically had. I can get you. I can send you the whole list. I only provided a sample here just to make it visible on the slide.
I like to see that whole list.
Send out the whole list.
Thank you. Yeah. Also, in terms of, I got to tell you, I will absolutely oppose the first item, the assistant superintendent. I'm just not going to support that. The 165, particularly since we haven't come back with the compensation equity plan yet, or approved plan. So I'm certainly not going to talk about hiring new assistant superintendents without having some kind of discussion around real discussion and agreement on compensation equity in this district. My other question around, my other question on this is on page 11, which is the item that I pointed out a couple of meetings ago when I noticed it was like $76,000 missing somewhere. And you said it was unallocated revenue. What does that mean exactly?
So we occasionally have dollars that come into us. As an example, and I'm not sure if this was the case, but I'll use it as an example. If a school district is paying us tuition or is reimbursing us for special education costs, we then can push the dollars against where the expense originated and effectively reduce the amount of that expense. So the managed school transportation grant, as an example, right, is a revenue item that gets pushed against the transportation line item. So we had $75,000 in change of revenue on the day that we ran the last outlook on January 8th that had not been changed into a reduction in one of those expense categories yet.
What date was that you ran that?
It was January 8th. That was the date we
January
did our
8th.
last forecast.
Okay. So it was basically kind of lost in the sauce somewhere. It was like $36,000. Nobody knew about it.
No, we absolutely knew about it. It was
Okay.
just we hadn't done a journal entry yet to lower one of the expense lines.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Those are the questions I had around the budget. I have more questions, but those are the points I wanted to bring up now. In terms of the school nurses, I wanted to make sure I understood, Dr. Tracy, what was said. I think I heard that we're budgeted for 41 nurses. We have 29 nurses. Every school open right now has a nurse on site. Is that what I heard?
Through the chair, may I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to make sure. Thank you. Yeah, so every school has an assigned nurse, and some of the schools, 5 schools have a temp nurse from the temp agency.
Could we make sure we have a definition of what assigned nurse is? Because 2 schools could share one nurse and both of them have an assigned nurse. Is that correct?
That is only correct if someone calls out without notice and it doesn't allow us enough time to get a temp agency to assign a nurse for that school.
Okay, so
That's when it happens.
So at this point, every school that is open actually has a nurse on. If every nurse showed up, we would have a nurse at every school. Is that correct? That is
a nurse
open.
is assigned at every school, correct.
Right. Now, we're eventually going to go to in class full, right? I mean, or at least even if we go remote to all of these schools, we'll eventually have all of the schools open partially, right? And that's, how many buildings do we have now? I've lost track. When I came here, it was like 42. Now it's somewhere, what, 39, 38, Dr. Tracy?
We had 41, including what you call Riverside, I think it is. And there are some schools that have 2 buildings, like Brennan Rogers and Hooker. They have 2 separate locations, 2 separate buildings.
Right.
So that adds to that number. Currently, I think we have about 31 K-8, pre-K-8 schools. Correct me if I'm wrong, team. 31 pre-K-8 schools. And 2 of them do not need a nurse, which is Quinnipiac and West Rock.
So we don't do nurses at high schools?
Yes, we do nurses at high schools.
All right. Yes. So right now, if every school was open, even if it was open partially, how many schools would we have? How many buildings would we have?
That's, I would think about 39, correct?
Yes. We would have somewhere around 39. So
somewhere around 39.
So we are still 10 nurses short. Is that correct?
Correct. So we're budgeted for 41 and we are 10 nurses short. We are actively recruiting, interviewing. We just actually hired another nurse, and we're awaiting the process to go through in regards to HR. So we are actively interviewing and looking to ensure that we are preparing and are going to be staffed for the next phase of reopening.
All right, let me make sure that everybody's clear. For me, anyhow, questions and comments related to nurses is not a knock, especially if we're short on this administration or in the school system. Because I know my wife is a nurse, so I know how tough it is out there for you guys. It's a seller's market right now. Nurses can make a whole lot of money, a whole lot of different places. So it's going to be more difficult on a school budget to recruit nurses. I understand that. I think what we want to make sure that we get, or that I want to make sure that I get, is that I get the right information. So if we have 39 buildings open and we only have 29, 30 nurses, then we need to know that. Even if we can't do anything about it, it's good for us to be able to have that information. So I appreciate the effort that you're putting out there to recruit. I know how tough it is. And I just cross my fingers and hope that you guys are able to get as many as you can with the limited budget that you have. And I had one other question. It was around the bus monitors, and it was something that Mr. Jackson said that confused me a little. He says we won't have monitors on every bus. He said we won't have monitors on every bus, but then he says we were only going to have monitors on the K. It was like
special education buses,
special education, and pre-K, right?
Pre-K, yeah.
So that's basically where we were before the pandemic started. Is that correct?
No,
that's no different than pre-pandemic, right? We just had them on special ed and pre-K. Is that correct?
Currently, we have pre-K, which is the Mayo Center, that you need buses for the Mayo Center because of their program. We also have special education where you have to have bus monitors. We have bus monitors. Other than that, what they're trying to do, because we do have grant monies that we can use for bus aids or monitors. The challenge that we're having, Mr. Golson, is that, as he shared with you, 33 applied. Out of that 33, only 8 they could have interviewed that, because remember, they have to pass background check, they have to all these things, same thing with subs. So even though we may have 100 apply, you may have only 10 or so out of that 100 that are eligible to be a part of this bus monitoring system. So I know Mr. Carl is new to this, but we're working with him to get, because we did have monies earmarked for bus monitors. The challenge is finding them.
I get it.
It's not like they're knocking down the doors to come to work. And then he also talks about the ones that the bus company provides, because they do provide some bus monitors too. It's different from the rate of pay that we do for those that we hire. Correct, Phil?
That is
Phil's
correct.
gone to sleep. Yeah, thank you.
Again, asking the questions doesn't mean that I'm questioning the administration's ability to get it done. I understand the issue around recruiting. Probably some of these people are getting paid just to stay home. I mean, because of the special unemployment and all that other stuff. I get it.
Yes.
I understand that. Again, I just want to make sure I understand where we are. And where we are right now is basically where we were pre-pandemic. Because of the lack of ability to be able to recruit folks, we are at the same place we were pre-pandemic, which was having pre-K and special ed monitors, and that's about it.
Carl, could you answer?
If more people applied, then we could have more bus monitors. But at this point, we're not getting the applications. That's what you're saying.
Applications. We do get applications, but they don't measure up to what is needed.
Got it. We
got to do background checks and what have you. So
I understand that.
Just to add to Dr. Tracy, respectfully, yes, we are covering more than pre-K and SPED, and we're using First Student to do it. And they have agreed to do it. and there's an uptick of about 40 additional hours a day of bus monitors that are being used by per student, and they're being distributed, throughout the buses, and that's above and beyond pre-K and SPED. So that is actually happening. Is it happening, so that we can cover 300 to 400 buses? No, and it's probably not going to happen. But out of respect of the pandemic and the directives that I get from the executive team, that I've been working with First Student to advance that the wishes.
All right, so I just want to make a suggestion. I mean, if you want less questions around these issues, maybe we should, if you're going to give a report, maybe we should have something written, because I heard a presentation and I heard something that confused me because it sounded different from what someone else was saying. So written would make it a lot easier for me to be able to follow along. I'm a little dense. In my last comment is my last comment is around the presentation that you gave around the sample teaching and learning experiences. It was interesting. I'm not quite sure why they weren't included in the public participation as opposed to your presentation, but that's fine. I just wanted to point out that I didn't see any Black students or parents participate in that, and I hope that we'll do a little more recruiting to make sure that they're represented at the table when you're giving viewpoints on how the school system is
This
operating.
is one of the few presentations, Mr. Golson, so.
Thank you very much. That's it from me, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Golson. Mr. Conaway, and then Mr. Wilcox, and then I have a really quick question for Director Bond.
If I, Mr. Conway and Dr. Jackson, if there are no questions for Director Bond and Ms. Harris, I know they work very hard and
I do. I have a
Okay.
really quick
Okay,
one.
my
Is it
apologies.
okay? Is
Go
it
ahead.
okay if
My
I
apologies.
jump in?
Go ahead.
My question is more, what we look to recruiting in terms of nurses are RNs, correct?
Correct.
Is there a possibility of maybe extending that to LPNs just to make it easier to recruit, or is that not accepted?
I would have to go through the job description and see if there's we'll have to go through that process. I know the LPNs can be hired. They would have to be supervised by an RN. So it's just some of the logistic pieces of hiring an LPN.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Conway, Mr. Wilcox, do you guys have questions for Director
Yes,
Bond?
I do. A lot of my stuff was answered by Dr. Mr. Golston. He took a lot.
Hold on.
But I just
You're
wanted
muted. You're muted, Mr. Golson. Good.
I think the voices of students need to be on Essa. I didn't see any student voice on there at all. Is that correct, or did I miss something? Dr. Tracy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Golson. So when we said please know that this is a group that is putting the information together that comes from a broader community. We've had several focus groups. We're having focus group with students, focus group with parents, focus group with more community members. So with this group that is called the planning group, they are collating all of those materials that's coming from these various focus groups, putting it together, looking at themes, big themes that's coming from all of those things that are documented from the focus group. And that's how they're helping to put in the suggestions so that the team that is writing will have enough information to write. So every constituent is involved. Even the board, if the board has ideas that they want to share, can be generated to Ms. Hannans or even to me. Any ideas that you think you want. This is not an Eileen Tracy or New Haven Public School only. It's the entire community. We've had about 500 participants so far since we started. We have some more Essa meeting with school community, which will include more parents. Ms. Hannons has a focus group coming up with students. So in terms of voices, all voices will be heard that
Okay.
want to be heard.
Okay, so the protocol, if those voices want to be heard, like of students, I guess you have a focus group. Like if like parent advocates or our own parent group, you know, or the board, we need to come to those focus groups. Is that what you're saying?
You can, when we have the whole community piece that's coming up. Ms. Hannons, when this?
Yeah, so just speak to that. So we held the student focus group this past Wednesday. We met with the student council. We received great feedback from the student council, and they were very appreciative of the time we took to listen to them. So they have definitely been included in the process.
Yes.
As board members, you can send an email to Dr. Tracy and let us know your suggestions. I know Dr. Jackson MacArthur has let it be known twice, right? In the last 2 meetings, what her suggestion is and what she would like to see in the grant, right? So we are taking those suggestions. So you can give us the suggestions at any time. You, of course, you can attend the community meetings if you so choose to. Any community member can attend them. Any parent can attend the community meetings. And we have sent numerous information out, letting folks know how to register, as we've been on today, because Gemma has the first parent and community meeting tomorrow night from 5:30 to 7. I see she's sent some more invitations out, in addition to what we've sent Parent Link, in addition to what is already posted on our website. As stated previously, we've had 500 staff and students attend our first set of focus groups already. So we feel great about the input that we're receiving to date.
And the board can, to be honest, if the board, we never involve the board as a body per se in any plan, whether strategic or any other plan what we've had. What the board normally would do is suggest a member or two that would join on to a group. So if the board so chooses, I keep knocking myself off. If the board so chooses to designate 1 or 2 individuals from the board's team, so it doesn't, we're not holding a board meeting per se. The board can do that, as you've done in other instances. In our Tiger team, Matt was there. In our strategic plan, Matt was there. So you have the right to designate people from this body who could be a part of those groups. Because if we have all the board members, it would be considered a board meeting. We don't want.
Got it. I understand. And my last thing is that I want to just make a comment about vaccines with the governor's announcement that came out today, and the teachers, you know, getting the teachers getting them to get their vaccines. I think that's a good thing, and I think that I think Mr. Ciccarello spoke to that, and I hope that we do utilize that, because I think that's a good protection for the staff. Them vaccines, they're something that I don't want to lose that thought either. Thank you.
No, thanks, Mr. Conway.
Conway.
March 1st is when teachers, not only teachers, staff, when staff can start signing up for this vaccine, March 1st. We're looking and working with the health department of a better way of having majority of our staff get vaccinated, and they're working with us of how we can roll this out to our staff members. Now, along that, with the staff, the governor has said the expanding to age 55 to 64, etc., that expansion will be happening simultaneously. But they did give us the go ahead to have staff vaccination. Month of March is a focus for staff vaccination.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mr. Wilcox, and then Dr. Jackson, Mr. Golson.
All right, thank you very much. I have, I think, a couple questions here, maybe 3. Related to the ESSER 2 funding, I've been listening to all my colleagues' questions and comments and everything too, and just wanted to clarify the focus groups that are happening this week. I'm looking on the district website. the registration that was talked about, that's linked to right off the top level of the district website. So, but I'm also guessing that if, 200 people signed up, you wouldn't be able to get all those comments or questions in. So what's the most effective way for people that are not going to be able to attend these focus groups, or not going to be able to have their comments heard, if they have ideas or thoughts, other community members? Is it to email information to you, Dr. Tracy, or to Dr. Tracy and Ms. Red Hannons?
If I can respond, Doc?
So, but if it's board members send them to me. If it's community, they send to, but let me say, we have the ability to put them in small groups with the way we are set up. So that's what we have been doing. Go ahead, Ms. Hannons.
Yes, so one of our, I think our largest focus group so far has been 150 people. We have facilitators that are ready to organize the focus groups in breakout rooms. So everybody's voice will be heard. Within those breakout rooms, we have note catchers. So someone is in there taking notes. So we have developed a system, and as I stated earlier, and I hope they're still on, Cora and Regina have helped me in organizing this in such a way that we can capture everyone's voice, everyone's thoughts. Honestly, you see the meeting is from 5:30 to 7. The parents and community members probably will be whole group for about 15 to 20 minutes max. And then the rest of the time it's in a focus group. If the group is long, we will put them in large, we will put them in breakout rooms. So we are capturing their voice. If they cannot attend, then they can send an email to Dr. Tracy or myself, and we will get it to the appropriate subcommittee.
And the information that was presented in tonight's board packets and is posted on the district website that lists the priority areas, the presentation that you made, those are the areas that you all are needing to work within. So I just want to make sure we understand how people that aren't officially included on these lists can get their ideas into the mix. So and if you've signed up to be in one of those groups, you get a confirmation. I assume these are done through Zoom registration. So you should get a confirmation, and then you'll be able to know that you'll have the, okay. Just wanted to confirm that, because I do hope we're getting, what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of effort to try to get a lot of voices in there. And I think some of the best ideas are going to come from the people that aren't typically in the rooms that we have, in terms of the district. Particularly because some of this is to help, for instance, with students that need the most work to catch up. Those are precisely some of the students that aren't going to be in the rooms. And so reaching out to figure out ways to do that, I think, is going to be key. I had a quick question related to the COVID dashboard that was just posted. I did take a look at it. I think it's good, useful information. What I'm not sure about is, did you all say how often it's going to be updated? Is there a schedule for updating that information on the site?
So the last conversation we had with the health department that we would update every Monday. But Keisha, I'm not sure if this now is interactive and they're updating more frequently than every Monday.
I believe Director Bond stated tonight that it will be updated weekly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and it does say when it was updated, so people will be able to see. So I think it's a great improvement. Thank you for that. And finally, my question's related to bus monitors. I mean, the reason for the desire for bus monitors is to make sure that the safety protocols are being followed, that the kids are wearing masks, particularly on the bus, et cetera. So I understand that we're not going to be able to have as many bus monitors as we would like, based on not being able to hire them because they're not applying and meeting the qualifications, et cetera. But I do think we need to make sure that we're ensuring that the safety protocols are being followed. I know that we've talked previously that the bus drivers and there's signage and so on, but then the bus drivers, one of the primary things they're supposed to do is drive a bus. And I'm just wondering, is there some other ways to ensure that safety protocols are being followed? And I mean, the buses have cameras in them? Could we sample, security staff sample some of the footage just to kind of see, you know, look at footage from 10 buses. Are they wearing the masks or not? Because then that's going to lead us to the idea. I mean, that's going to lead to where the problems are. And maybe we can identify that, you know, that we need to expand or really try to figure out the bus monitor situation. So I'm just wondering if there's some other ways. And that's the one thing that came to my mind. So those are the questions and comments I had. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Wilcox, for that comment and possible solution. We will work with Chief Reddish to do that sampling to see. I've not had much of any complaints from the bus drivers, usually who would write up students and give us the complaints. We haven't seen any yet. So that's another way. Usually they would write up to say students are not behaving or not wearing their mask. We have not seen any of that communication yet. Paul, Carl, have you gotten any yet? Carl left? Or Carl left. But usually they would come to the principals to say that Johnny refuses to wear his or her mask, etc., and it would become like an infraction of some sort from the bus. We haven't seen any of those yet. Of course, the occupancy in the bus is very tiny right now. A lot of parents are dropping their kids off to school instead of having them take the bus. So you may have a big bus with just about 5 or 10 kids sometimes.
Dr. Jackson and then Mr. Golson.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Tracy, my question is piggybacking off of my colleague, Matt Wilcox. I know that, you know, Mr. Jackson said that we will not have bus monitors on every bus. That's what he just said. And so I know that the bus monitors were around safety. One of the things that I think is giving us some level of giving us time is that the buses are deserted, which is good. But we can't, as we go through this whole bus monitor thing, I don't think we should be saying we're not going to be able to put a bus monitor on every bus. I think we should put a bus monitor on as many buses as we can. I like to go at it like from that view. And I don't think we should ever rely on the school bus driver to be monitoring COVID precautions because they're driving. They can't worry about, you know, Joey in the back if he's doing what he's doing without a mask. I don't see how they can do that because we're not supposed. That's kind of like doing your cell phone when you're driving. You know, I think their focus is supposed to be on the street. So I don't think we should rely on them around that. And I just hope that we go at it from the vantage point of as the buses fill up, because you know they are going to fill up because we're pushing to go back to school. We know we are still going to be wearing masks for a while. That we should be pushing to get the buses where the bus monitors on as many buses as possible, and Mr. Penn will get us the money from the COVID money, right?
The money man will have it there. So Dr. Jackson, point well taken. We're not relying on the bus drivers to do that level of monitoring. All school buses have cameras on there, and that's why Matt's suggestion was a great suggestion, to take a sample of what's on those cameras, and that will give us a sense. I think that was a great suggestion, Matt. Thank you. Give us a sense of that. So again, if you know of anyone out there in the community who wants to be a bus monitor, and you can send them into ApplyTrack and have them apply. For the life of me, I cannot understand why we did not have more people applying. I'm not sure if the wages or what have you, or the hours that they have to work do not match with what they have to do personally. But it is out there. We have not even taken it down yet. It's still on our site, being advertised for bus monitors. So
what is the qualifications of a bus monitor?
What was that?
What are the qualifications of the bus monitor?
No, when I say quality, it's just a matter of, they don't need a degree, but when they get to us, they have to pass the background check. And that's, okay. We have 33 as
people that are listening.
Yeah, I don't think they need any particular from my perspective, particular qualification, but they have to be able to work around children. So if there's something in their background that prevent that, we cannot hire them.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Dr. Jackson, I think your dog wants to be a board member.
It's so
Cute.
cutie. From when I come back, when I come home from work, I can't get rid of her. She's like,
Cute. Mr. Goldson.
If she gets the vote, I definitely would support her joining the board. I think the suggestion that Mr. Wilcox made was a terrific suggestion. It just goes to the point I was making earlier about having different people at the table with different viewpoints. I think that it's an inexpensive way of identifying where problems may be, and it's not and for folks out there listening, it's not about punishing any students or any bus drivers or anything else. It's just about seeing what the behaviors are out there and making adjustments based on that. The only other point I wanted, I also understood his comments around how folks can participate in this process, like with the focus groups and so on. But the point that I was trying to make was that a lot of these parents, especially the parent leaders, don't want to be talked to. They want to be at the table helping to make the final decisions. And focus groups are, they do not determine what ideals get into the final document. It's those folks that are sitting at the table who do, which is why, again, the superintendent made a suggestion earlier that board members can make suggestions to the committee. So, Madam President, I'm going to send you 2 or 3 suggestions for folks to be assigned to these committees, and I hope that other board members do so also, so that we can expand the voices at the table. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Seeing no further discussion, Dr. Tracy, does this conclude your report?
Yes, this concludes our report. And can I say something? The suggestion I'm looking for is not to add more people to the 70-member team that we have. We're looking for ideas of how we can spend this funding. So based on the 4 priority areas delineated by the State Department of Education, because everything we do have to be coherent under those areas from the State Department. So that's what we're looking for right now, ideas.
Understood. Thank you, Dr. Tracy. All right, so we'll move on to the President's report regarding the Columbus School Renaming Committee. We've got a pretty decent list going of committee members. The list is not completed. I'm going to be discussing with Dr. Tracy this week her staff picks, and I will also be discussing with Dr. Jackson meeting dates. We actually talked a little bit about it before this meeting to get the meeting dates going. So what I'll do is, once I discuss with Dr. Tracy who some of her picks will be, and discuss with Dr. Jackson meeting dates, I will then email the committee members and the full board, and I hope to do that by the end of the week so that we can get these meetings going. So if you haven't already, please be sure to send me your names for your committee members. Okay. Was that it, Mr. Goldson?
Yeah, I have 2 names I'll send to you tonight.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Facilities Naming Committee. I'm sorry. Finance and Operations Committee. I'm looking at my notes.
All right, thank you, Madam President. The Finance and Operations Committee did meet last week, as is typical. You have the minutes are posted, and the minutes were in the board information for this meeting. There were no information-only items at that particular meeting. We do have 2 voting items on the agenda here for tonight. So first thing here is I move that we approve the 5 abstracts and 3 agreements as listed on the agenda.
Is there a second? Mr. Conway,
Second.
any discussion? Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to put on the record that I'm disappointed with the Boys and Girls Club of New Haven decrease in funding. I'm not quite sure. I don't know the details about it. But I wish that we could have found a way to keep their funding and expand the program or extend the program or whatever. I'm at this point, I don't want to rehash it, but in the future, I'll be looking at this kind of funding because, they just barely survived last year, and even a reduction of $18,000 hurts their ability to be able to provide the very valuable services that they provide to our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
I'm going to abstain because I just don't understand the Boys and Girls funding at this point.
okay. Dr. Joyner, Dr. Joyner's not with us at the meeting. Dr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Mr. Fiore's still not with us, right? And I think Ms. Aruna left as well.
Yes.
Okay, and so I am a yes. So F&O items pass.
Okay, thank you. The second item on our agenda this evening is the committee did have updates at the last two meetings for finance and operations, and at their last finance and operations meeting, we did vote to recommend to approval of a 4-year local 217 Unite Here tentative agreement for the fiscal years 21 through 24. So there is discussion listed in the agenda, in the minutes of that meeting, and I'm unsure tonight if there's going to be information presented from the administration on this and the process, if I should make a motion and then we discuss it as part of that, or if we want to hear it before we make a motion.
I thought this was part of the F&O items that we just voted on because it's just listed as X. Or
No, it's a separate, it's not this is the separate agreement because it's not the typical, I'm moving them separately because the others are our typical agreements and contracts that we see. And this is a labor agreement, which I would think would need to be moved separately.
Okay. So are you going to move, are you moving that item or are you waiting for?
My question is, are we going to have, if I need to move it first before we have discussion and information from staff if needed, or maybe that's the most proper thing to do. So I'm going to move that the board approves the 4-year local 217 Unite Here tentative agreement.
Is there a second?
I'm going to second. I was at the F&O when we had this discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr.
Madam
Goldberg?
President, before you start the discussion on this item, I'd just like to make sure that I'm clear about the last vote that I made against the finance agenda. It wasn't because of anything that the administration or the committee did. I just waited too long to identify this issue and didn't have a chance to discuss it with the relevant parties. So that's on me. It's not on anybody else. I just want to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldson. Okay, so discussion on local 217 tentative agreement. No discussion.
Can we get a quick overview? Did the union vote on it? What was the vote of the union? What does this actually do?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Goldson. Dr. Tracy, is Mr. Penn still on? I think he gave us the overview at the F&O meeting.
Yeah, he's
there you are. You're at the bottom of my screen. Mr. Penn, could you give us an overview?
Sure. So yeah, I can confirm that the union did ratify the agreement, which is why it's before you tonight. This is a 4-year agreement, and I can actually, if I may, share my screen one more time. I could probably give you a little more detail. It'd probably be good for the public as well. So as you can see, this is a total a 4-year agreement. So the food service workers have been working without a contract since July 1st. We've had various ongoing discussions with the union leadership over that time. It originated with Mr. Pinto and then passed to me after Mr. Pinto departed. Mr. Gormany and Ms. Sherry were very instrumental in the discussions as well. Really, Mr. Gormany took the lead in many cases, I would say. But we put together a 4-year agreement that calls for the increases that are spelled out here. Retroactive to July 1st, 2020, a 2.5% increase, followed by a 2.75, and then 3 in each of the 2 outlying years of the 4-year contract. I would point out that this is a bargaining unit that does not have steps in any shape or form. So if you're a cook lead, regardless of whether or not you've been there for 5 years or you've been there for 1 year, that position's paid at the same rate. So they are effectively dependent entirely on general wage increase in terms of having any kind of increase in their compensation. The other part to this is they came to us with a very interesting proposal around changing their healthcare plan to one that offers multiple tiers. So what they have is a Platinum Plus plan, and they have proposed adding a, I think it's called a Gold plan. And this is a little bit different because these are not city healthcare plans. These are healthcare plans that are actually generated by the union themselves. But what's beneficial to us and to the union membership is we think that about 30% membership will move to the Gold plan going forward, and we'll have the ability to take advantage of 4 different tiers being available in the plan compared to 3. And there's variable costs within those 4 so that people that have either an employee plus a spouse, or in particular an employee plus a child, may also save some money as a result of this. Long story short, at the end of the memo, you can kind of see what the impact are on the wage changes over that duration of time for the next 4 years. And as I said, there's actually healthcare savings afforded to both the district and to the membership over each of those 4 years. It's back end weighted because the earliest that we can make a change to the plan would be April 1st. But the total cost to the food service fund, and remember, this is not typically a general funded item. In normal years, they're a self-funded program, is a total of a little over $130,000 over the 4 years. So it was a fairly concise negotiating approach. Typically, you raise all kinds of working conditions issues and other terms and conditions that are in the contract. This was entirely focused on wages and healthcare and nothing else. So all the other terms and conditions of the contract would remain intact going forward. We would just roll the wages and the healthcare information into a formalized agreement if the tentative agreement is approved tonight by the board.
Thank you, Mr. Penn. Mr. Golton?
I have 2 quick questions. One is, why are they on a separate plan from everyone else in the city? And 2, it's around the signature page. I see that Mr. Penn signed, and I'm wondering who at the school system has authority to sign contracts. This signature is, what does this represent? It's an agreement.
It's a tentative agreement. It's not the actual contract.
All right. So okay. So you negotiated. So that's
right.
why you signed it.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Right. And you'll see the counter signature from Ms. Holt, who was led the negotiation on the union side.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. But so the first question is, well, the only question is now is, why do they have a different health plan than everybody else in the city?
Is a great question. I don't know the history, but I'll follow up with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penn. Mr. Golton? Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to approve Local 217 tentative agreement. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Golton?
Yes.
Mayor
Yes.
Elicker?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner is not on still, right? Dr. Jackson? Dr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Conaway?
Yes.
Students are not here, and I am a yes, and so that motion passes. Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox?
I'll just to finish with the finance and operations, just the standard, you know, if people have any comments or questions, the F&O committee is working on having the information for this meeting posted on Thursdays when possible. So there's an extra day to take a look at this. And staff has been working towards that goal, and we hope to get there. There's an extra day to take a look at this. But if there's any comments or questions that people have, we want to get the answers from the board or community members. And my suggestion is always send it to the committee, myself, President Rivera, and Mr. Conaway, as well as Dr. Tracy. So for Head Start, I'll be brief with this. Head Start subcommittee met last week. Couple things you all need to know. One is I always talk about enrollment. That's one of the things that we need to pay attention to is number of students enrolled. We're fine now under COVID. If we were not under COVID, we would be under enrolled. And so that's an issue. But we're fine now, but there is going to be several enrollment drives and so that we can get ready for whenever the government requires us to live by the standard enrollment numbers, but we're doing fine now. As you all know, the director, Liz Gaffney, is moving on to another position in another district. And it was reported at the meeting that Ms. Pam Augustine Jefferson's taking on the official director duties related to, because we have to have somebody in place for this program for the feds. The job has been posted, it looks like on February 5th. So if anybody knows anybody who would be an amazing Head Start director, I'm sure the district and probably particularly Ms. Augustine Jefferson would love to hear about them. So please direct them to our website for the job posting. And then finally, I did have a conversation with Devin Jones, who's our Head Start person that handles New Haven for the Head Start Region 1, and just to assure him that, you know, that the board, we're still paying attention. We're still having a subcommittee meetings. We still talk about it in each of our meetings. And so we want to make sure that we're not losing the great momentum that has built up over the last couple of years. And we want to continue with that. So, and he seemed very happy to hear that. So that's my Head Start report.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Tracy?
I forgot to say two things. I know you know that we have under my other report that we have HSC where the leader had left to another school system.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, I think the board needs to know that the new building leader is Carrie Strand, who was their curriculum specialist, and Michelle Cabaldon will be the co-building leader. This is the teacher-run school. HSC is a teacher-run school. So I just wanted to report that these two individuals will be taking charge of the school since the leader left.
Okay.
Okay.
What is it, high school in the community?
Yes, high school and community. Yeah, I
Okay.
forgot to say that. I promised the union leader to say that and I left that out inadvertently.
Thank you, Dr.
And
Tracy.
Ms. Jackson also wants to remind the board about the Day of Hope and Healing, which is February 24th, that's coming up. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Governance report, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. And I want to touch upon, we did just miss the memorial that the country had for the over 500,000 COVID deaths that they have now registered. So we're in the midst of this, and I think that we're doing a great job in preparing and keeping our district safe. But 500,000 deaths is insane, not even a year. So governance, I don't have anything to vote on today, but I have two updates. The first update I would like to talk about is the resource officer committee has brought forth their draft that will be in your packets next week. Next time. We didn't have it in time for this meeting, but they have worked very, very hard. And governance is, we did vote it through to come to the board. We do support their recommendation, but it's not exactly what everyone thinks. So it's a very, very great recommendation. It's fluid. And as I had said to Madam President weeks ago, while the recommendation is going to come through, this is a process that is going to continue. And I took the liberty of speaking to the chair, and I did speak to you. So my recommendation will be to continue that relationship. So I told him he's voluntold versus volunteered.
Got it.
Moving on, I did promise, and this is going to be not a long communication, but the discipline policy that had with the code of conduct within it that we passed last time, our last meeting, was a labor of love that was worked on for over 7 years in this district. There were a lot of people that were involved, and I just wanted them to come on, and I didn't know we were going to be 8 o'clock. So they're going to go quick, come on just to, so you could see the faces and hear the voices behind this. This document, while we voted on it, is not a static document. It is a document that is going to continue to evolve and change with the times. We're all, done with the district. It's still going to be here. So I'm going to bring Gemma Lumpkin on, who was here from the beginning, and she could just start and give.
Okay, thank you. Dr. White, do you see Daniel Cooper?
Gemma, it's 8 o'clock, so just remember, it's 8
Okay,
o'clock.
just wanted to point that out. Just very quickly, I wanted to share with with the board. First of all, thank you for moving this forward, and to let you know that we had a strong coalition of folks working on this starting 7 years ago, and we saw a serious uptick in behavior issues in our community as well as within our schools. And we pulled together as a community to figure out what we can do. We knew we needed to do some sustainable actions. We need to put those actions in place, including youth staff and our policies that we felt could support our students and our schools in ensuring safety. And you can see here some of the variety of folks, in particular, our parents, our students, the New Haven Federation of Teachers, and David Ciccarella, who applied for a national grant from the AFT for us to push restorative justice and restorative practices, training and supports for our families, our SAA, and a bunch of us all got together to write this document. Some of the folks are here tonight, and I briefly wanted to give some of them 30 seconds. I'll start with Dr. Cooper because our team relied heavily on supports from the UNH Tau Youth Justice Center. And if you can just take 30 seconds, Dr. Cooper, to just give us some insights, and then I'll quickly have some of our families and one of our family representatives speak. Dr. Cooper? And you're muted.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Danielle Cooper. I bring you greetings from the University of New Haven, and I also reside right here in Westville in New Haven. I was very much listening to your last Board of Education call and just want to take a moment to thank you on behalf of myself and others who have passionately been learning as well as working to engage our youth in a more positive and proactive way. The type of commitment that you all have made as a Board of Education, I think, is very valuable. I want to just share with you before I stop talking that at the university, I also work with the Tau Youth Justice Institute. We serve and represent really what is the juvenile justice and reform effort and agenda here in the state of Connecticut. And I think that what you all have done will really be a model while other schools throughout the state are asking themselves, what does it mean for themselves to engage their students in the discipline product? What does it mean to engage the community? What does it mean to engage with the police officers and school resource officers? I think you all will be called to continue to share the work that you've done. Thank you for letting me be here with you tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Cooper. We also have one of our leading administrators who supported those efforts. You heard from him a little earlier, Luis Manacho. He is definitely a laboratory school for us to have folks look at how this work can be achieved.
All right, thank you, Gemma, and good evening again. So 30 seconds will not do this any justice. I can actually do a full presentation on this. At Martinez, we have fully embraced the code of conduct and what it represents. What really resonates for us is the relationship piece, and we've done remarkable work around building relationships with all of our community members, our students and families. It was not an easy task. We did a deep dive into the data to suggest where our office referrals are coming from and what the infractions were at the school level. From that point on, we provided our teachers with professional development around restorative practices, trauma-informed instruction. We created a model PBIS program in our school. And what the rubber meets the road is we formed the relationships, we got the culture and climate where we need it to be, and the outcome is always our student and academic outcomes. And I'm proud to say that our students are achieving at high levels in ELA and math. We were recently given a distinction of being one of the magnet school of distinction in the country. So we've done a lot of work, around engagement, and I would love the opportunity to share more of our practices and really how we built the system at Martinez to reflect the outcomes that we have been experiencing recently. So thank you.
Thank you, Lou. And Joanne Wilcox stuck it out with us for the last 7 years. Would like to give her 30 seconds as well to share.
I will be brief. I just think about it from a parent's point of view. As somebody who had to pull that thing off the shelf and dust it off from orientation multiple times with a young man that was really struggling to stay on his education path, I really appreciate the fact that as family members, we can look at this document and say, oh, it's supposed to look like community. And that really brings us into a place of a team member. We are no longer sitting in a place of shame and isolation when our kids are having trouble with their behaviors in schools. And I think it really builds the bridge between those two things. We can stop the blame game, and we can create an environment where the team works together to create a plan that works well for students. And it starts with proactively taking that off the shelf, not reactively, reading it, understanding the community that we can bring because we've come together as a team.
Thank you, Joanne. And Ife Waters was one of our parents who was also involved in the process. I see citywide parent leadership. I'm thinking that's you, Ife.
Yes, I'm here, and I'd just like to thank you guys for actually listening when we first had a conversation about this whole policy, about looking at it as being outdated and how do we change to make it look the way it should, as Joanne was saying, as a community, as working together and not so much as targeting our kids. So I really appreciate the opportunity and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Cora Munoz was one of our teachers at the time who helped in the writing of it. Just want to give you a moment, Cora, to talk about what this meant.
Yeah, so and actually now I'm an assistant principal at Wilbur Cross, and so I've been able to work with Cameo Thorne the past year. Fortunately, the pandemic hit, and so we didn't get to finish everything, but we started training 125, 130 certified teachers at Wilbur Cross in restorative practices on that rotating basis, and also started pulling student groups to get student leadership as well. And so I'm looking forward to continuing the work with Cameo and the team.
Thank you, Cora. Kermit Carolina drove a lot of this work. Want to give him a chance to share?
Yes, I want to say, number one, I'm just so proud to have been a part of the creation of this document. I want to sincerely thank the board from the bottom of my heart, just for having the insight and the foresight to understand the importance of this. As you guys know, the protection of our kids' instructional time is probably the most important thing that we can do as a district, and particularly you as policymakers can do, because as we increase instructional time, we create opportunities for our kids to achieve academically and improve their future outcomes. So as we know that pushing them out of the school buildings back to dysfunctional situations does not work. The resources are in our school buildings, and I want to thank you for having that foresight as a board. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it.
I see Selena Manning and Teresa Diaz. I don't recognize those names. I'm not sure if they are representing someone else here.
They are all note taker and or trans.
Okay, thank you. Also, Tiffany Jackson, who led the governance committee, is on and helped shepherd this through. Tiffany.
Hi everyone. Oops. How are you doing? I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with my video. I just wanted to say thank you. The whole team has come together to put it to life. Really, one of the things that we talked about is having this notion of having a restorative lens and working with our folks, making sure that what we have in this policy, that we're sharing that information with our building administrators and staff, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So thank you, and thank you to the team, and thank you, Gemma, for the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And finally, Clifford Bears, we consider them our official partner for care coordination, and they have joined us in open arms in working with our families, and Christine Montgomery is here.
Hello, everyone. Christine Montgomery from Clifford Beers. It's been wonderful to partner with Gemma and Tiffany and the team over the years, specifically around thinking about how to do things differently for some of our students. And it's especially this past year, I mean, a year ago, I would have never thought that this is where we'd be sitting today, still working in a remote environment. As far as Clifford Beers, we are providing home visiting and care coordination. We're doing outreach alongside our New Haven Public School partners. We're embedded in a number of New Haven Public Schools, and we look forward to continuing the partnership for many years to come. Thank you.
Good. And finally, thank you all. And finally, Dr. Jackson, we appreciate you just moving this forward and insisting that we pull together as a team and make this happen and work together, and just pushing us to ensure that. And also a shout out to Dr. Tracy. She only had a few words to say about it. She goes, get it done. Just get it done and make it happen. That was her directive to me just before COVID set in. So we're just grateful for this opportunity. Just one last quick share, if I'm able to do that, am I sharing? Yeah, to simply go to our next steps slide, if it comes up. We've completed initial mandatory training for our staff in YSCE, our in-school support, our dropout prevention specialists, our youth coordinators and parent liaisons, the folks who have direct impact often with our students who are struggling the most. We are going to be continuing with training for administrators, training for teachers and staff. We have an ask in for additional supports, school-based supports for implementation. And with that, I thank everyone, and that ends our presentation for this evening.
Thank you. Thank you all on the committee, and thank you, Dr. Jackson, for leading this effort.
Yes. And yeah, thank you, Gemma. Thank you, everybody. And I just want to tell the board, you guys should be real proud of yourself too, because it wouldn't have become policy if you didn't vote for it. So thank you so much. We did it. And we should be proud of this. And like Dr. Cooper said, you know, New Haven is a model in so many ways and so many things. And this is one of them. So bravo to the board too. And thank you, everybody. I really feel this. Very emotional, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Facility naming report, Dr. Jackson. I get that this
report.
is your first
Yeah,
your
yeah.
first one. I wrote up something for myself, but there's really no report.
Everything you said.
Yeah, the next meeting is April 15th. But no report at this time because we haven't met yet. Thank you. Teaching and learning report. Dr. Joyner is not here, but he asked for Ms. Velasquez to give the report, or at least part of it.
Sure. Good evening. So at Teaching and Learning this month, which actually took place on February 17th, we had two fairly substantial presentations. One was by the math department and the curriculum department on a potential math adoption. And so we are actually going to be doing that presentation again at FNO, and that's where a vote will be taken. So I won't speak too much about that other than, we had teachers, and I want to remind everyone, it's great when teachers come out. We had a lot of input from folks who piloted the materials and had an opinion about which of the two programs we should purchase. Then we also had a presentation by a group of students who are from the, I'm going to get their name right. It is actually the New Haven Climate Movement and Climate Education Committee. And they submitted a proposal of a project that they want to do around climate social justice in the schools at the high schools. And Dr. Jonah has received a packet from them. He is reviewing that packet and, further notice about, what next steps are. So I'll leave that to him to report out at the next meeting. And then we also touched upon something that is going to be important for us to start to think about, which is trips, international trips. And so Ms. Jessica Haxey proposed a timeline for which for us to consider the next trips. And essentially what she laid out was not reviewing any trips until the coming year. And at that point, no trips would be considered before late spring of 2022. And we would start the formal considerations in October. And so there was discussion on that. And Dr. Joyner there again was going to provide feedback. And then that was the bulk of it. Yes. And so there's items that he is receiving from people who presented and is reviewing. So I don't want to speak more about that other than, I think at the next meeting, he can update you on next steps. Thank you.
Evelise, can I ask you a question? Madam President, may I ask Evelise a question? Has there been any talk about the Black and Latino studies that came into law, and how are we addressing that? Did we already have that, or what is it exactly that it's required? What is the deal? I know you don't have to give it now, but can we get something on that at some point?
Absolutely. We've been reporting at it at TNL. It's come up, not the last meeting, but prior meetings. So I'm happy to put something together so you can see it pilots this year and goes fully the following year. Okay.
Is it from kindergarten to 12th grade?
No, it isn't. It's the first step is going to be a course in high school, a full year course, credited course. It's an elective. And then we're still working on working with the state legislature and CERC, who is doing the curriculum to looking at other grade levels. That's the initial launch is in high school.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, you're muted.
Go ahead, Mr. Goldson.
Thank you. Before we get to adjournment, I just had a question to ask about the bus monitors. This question was sent to me by a para. Can paras work buses both before school and after school in order to get an extra stipend or extra funding?
Good question.
Muted,
Dr.
Dr.
Tracy,
Jackson.
You're muted, Dr. Tracy.
Of course they can. It could be treated like how we used to pay them for before school students and then after school support. It all depends how it fits into their hours. So it depends how it fits into their hours. The only concern would be many of our schools are tier, my grandson making noise, sorry. Many of our schools are tier 3, many of the schools, and then that begins at 9:30. The challenge would be how they would get from there back into their school. And the early tiers are mostly high schools. That would be the challenge for our paras. The hours would be the challenge. You're muted, Mr. Golson.
You're muted.
So the short answer is yes, if it fits within their hours.
If it fits
If
into
they
their
can make it
hours.
with their regular hours. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway, your next two reports, food service and
Food service. I have
compensation.
a couple items to report. Number one, our next meeting is 3/4, and you can find the minutes on the website. But the three things that we're talking about is that we did get urban. I mean, it was presented an urban agriculture master plan project. Received a grant from the from urban agriculture, and the folks want the Board of Education to participate in that. The details again are in the minutes. We talked about updates on food service during remote learning and in-person learning. It's getting better, but it's still a challenge. Always we talk about food allergies and life-threatening foods, and that's just an ongoing discussion. And again, those minutes are on they're on the board website. It's a good, vibrant group. And our next meeting is March 4th. Mr. Wilcox, did you want to add anything?
No, sir.
Okay. My next report out is with the Compensation Equity Committee, and we are having some we're having some real discussions there, and we're talking about we set up two committees, one to look at overall job descriptions, the second one to look at what the rate is for the surrounding towns. We meet the last Wednesday of the month. We did put a placemat in F&O for equity. We didn't put a budget amount there though. Obviously with the governor's devastating budget, that's going to be an uphill battle. But we're going to try to come out with some. Oh, we've also added part-time pay equity to our discussion, and we're going to try to have something resolved by the end of the school year. A recommendation back to the full board. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. For Citywide School Building Committee report, we met last week. I forget the date. It was on
Dr.
Thursday.
Jackson had a question.
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Jackson.
My colleague Larry Conway, where are we with the life-threatening allergies and like the chain of custody when they get into, once they get into the schools? I don't know.
We're attempting to gather data school by school, student by student, and then to address it, school by school and student by student. We're gathering data right now because it's been a year since students have really come back to school with everybody coming back. We keep that on the agenda to address it as such. It's a challenge, how kids are eating. They're eating different, but the allergies are the same. And, we just keep bringing it up on the agenda item to address it so we don't have a disaster.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Okay, so I'll move on to Citywide School Building Committee report. The Martinez dehumidification system isn't working, and not only does the roof require maintenance, but all the ductwork connecting to it requires replacement as well. It's estimated that it'll cost around $400,000 for that repair and renovation, and they're currently awaiting a PO requisition. Also, hot water tanks and boilers at several of the schools are in need of replacement, and we are also currently waiting PO requisition for those as well. One school that typically runs, and I forget the name of the school, I'd have to look up the minutes, that typically runs on 3 boilers is now down to 1. So this is an item that's pressing to complete pretty soon. City Engineering Department Chief Landscape Architect has been working with Edgewood School concerning the Edgewood Playground that is in need of repair. There's currently a walkthrough being conducted to address the large tree with the roots sticking up, and options were discussed regarding the playground flooring. So that's a pending issue. And finally, adult education facility is also in need of repairs. The team advised that with the proposed new renovation, the new owners suggest it will be very costly to the district. So other alternatives should be discussed further, as well as obtaining an assessment from a consultant or an architect regarding the proposed renovation, just to figure out what that's going to be. And then the next meeting will be Thursday, March 11th, and we'll be voting on a committee chair and vice chair at that time. And that concludes my report. Dr. Jackson.
The newspaper was talking about the boiler breakdown and the update on that. Is that part of your committee?
Yes, but that just happened recently. So my committee has not addressed that. Dr. Tracy, has that been addressed?
So Wexford Ranch is one of those schools that was refurbished back in 2002. So it's over 18 years old right now. Only one of the boilers went out. And so what they had done in what President O'Neill had said about opening the damper to about letting about 30% air, it was sucking out the warm air and letting in too much cool air into the building. So the building became cold. Since then, they have worked on some things that the building is back up to running normally, while Mr. Penn has already put in for a new boiler to be in based on the funding we have. And also another school where we're looking at boiler replenishing is also Fairhaven Middle School. So again, these schools were refurbished quite a while. And so some people had been sending out misinformation. It is not a ventilation system, has nothing to do with COVID. It was just a boiler.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy.
The heat is back?
It is now working. It's operating on one boiler, so we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Tracy. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mayor Elicker, is he still on?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Golton?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner's not here. Dr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Conaway?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Night.